This old man was a legendary hunter. He had already conquered impossible dungeons. Now nearing 100 years old, he had retired and been forgotten. But one day, the insects invaded. After being defeated, he received the blessing of immortality. As a result, he regained the appearance of an 18-year-old and shocked the entire hunter industry. Suddenly, the entire world just changed overnight, and monsters started appearing all over the place. At the same time, some people gained powers that surpassed human limits. Known as hunters, they risked their lives fighting against the monsters. In front of a gate, a crowd waited anxiously for any news. Then, someone points and shouts that a person was finally coming out of the gate. Emerging from inside the portal, he appears impressively before them. Carrying his sword, he watches the gate close right behind him. With the dungeon cleared, everyone there starts celebrating the great achievement. Introduced as Guak Pilseong, he was the one who cleared countless impossible dungeons. 10 years later, he insists, saying his name is Guak Pilseong. Not believing him, the nurse responds mockingly that, yes, sure it was. Then another nurse arrives, asking his colleague what happened there. He explains that the patient always says he's the famous Guak Pilseong. Discussing it, they question why someone so incredible would be in a nursing home. Mocking him, one nurse supposes he was a con artist, and the other agrees. Complaining, the nurse says if he were a hunter, he wouldn't be stuck there. Then, they look back and see the old man approaching them. Worried, the nurse runs up to him and asks if he's okay. Trying to warn him, he tells the nurse to run away from that place immediately. Then, a giant monster appears by surprise, scaring both men. Grabbing the patient, the monster lifts him up while he screams for help. With a quick blow, the monster ends the patient's life. Seeing the scene, the nurse falls backward, completely terrified by everything. Cornered, he desperately screams for the monster not to come any closer. Suddenly, the old hunter leaps toward the giant monster. With a single strike, he pierces the monster's head without hesitation. Still on the ground, the nurse stares at the old hunter completely in shock. Irritated, he yells, asking what he's doing, and tells him to get up now. Then he warns there are more of them, telling the guy to get the others. Desperate, the nurse asks what he can do alone against them. With a serious look, he responds that he'll do whatever's within reach. Then he turns and walks outside, leaving the nurse behind. Shocked, the guy wonders if he really is the hunter Guak Pilseong. Changing scenes, several monsters exit a portal in the middle of the forest. Observing everything from above, he spots the monsters moving through the area. Outraged, he questions how the association allowed the monsters to spread. Meanwhile, the insects keep moving in groups through the wooded area. Suddenly, one of the monsters notices his presence on top of the rock. Realizing he's been seen, he says it's time to stretch. Jumping from the rock, he advances toward the monsters to attack first. Hitting the insect, he lands a precise blow right on the creature. In response, the monster lets out a scream and stares at the hunter with rage. Shouting, he tells the filthy insects to take that hit and get lost. With a powerful blow, he finishes them all off. After a while, he stands still, surrounded by the monsters he defeated. Breathing deeply, he complains that he's getting too old to get tired from insects. Lamenting not being 10 years younger, he notices something strange approaching. Turning quickly, he's startled by the presence that emerges behind him. Before him, a giant mantis monster appears menacingly. Staring at the creature, he asks if that huge thing is their leader. Then the monster just stares at him in silence before preparing its attack. With a quick movement, the monster advances, delivering a blow in his direction. Being hit head-on, he's thrown far away by the force of the blow. Fallen on the ground, he coughs while the monster prepares to attack again. Still recovering, he tries to get up, but the monster approaches. Lowering itself, the monster prepares to devour him with its enormous mouth. Irritated, he yells, questioning how the creature dares to put its mouth on him. Reacting quickly, he lands a direct hit on the monster's face. With the blow, the creature recoils while screaming from the attack it suffered. Being thrown against the tree, he spits blood from the strong impact received. Even wounded, he holds onto the monster's head as it continues thrashing. Exhausted, he questions if the long and difficult battle finally ended there. Shouting, he warns with determination that it was time to finish all of this. Gathering his strength, he advances to deliver the final blow against the monster. After the blow, the monster finally screams and its head starts to fall. Then the creature's giant body finally falls to the ground, lifeless. With a smile, he says that the hunter Guak Pilseong hasn't died yet. With no more strength, his body ends up collapsing to the ground completely without energy. Fallen there, he questions if his old body finally reached its limit. Seeing the portal, He laments that he wouldn't have suffered if he were younger. Suddenly, a window congratulates him for having cleared that entire dungeon. Then another appears announcing a special reward, leaving him quite confused. As a reward, the window informs him that he'll receive the blessing of immortality. Confused, he says he's never heard of a special reward like this. Not understanding anything, he wonders what the hell is happening at that moment. With the blessing, the system warns him that he'll become immune to aging. Seeing the gate closing, someone warns there's an unconscious person there. Worried, a woman calls out to him and asks if he can hear her. Opening his eyes slowly, he asks confused where he is. Then the nurse explains that he's in a hospital after being seriously injured. Then she asks for his information and he responds with his name and date of birth. Shocked by the year, she asks if he really was born on that distant date. Irritated, he questions if the girl is deaf and how many times does he need to repeat. Affirming, he yells that yes, he's 83 years old. Cutting to a new scene, the story continues the next day at the city hospital. Still confused, she asks if he's serious about being 83 years old. Confirming once more, he asks how many times he'll need to repeat the same thing. Joking around, he says it's no surprise she's shocked by his appearance. At that, he freezes, completely shocked by what she just said. Running to the window, he stares at his own reflection and goes speechless. Going to a mirror, he screams desperately, wanting to know what happened. Seeing the scene, the nurse concludes that the young man hit his head hard. Then she warns that she'll get a doctor, asking him to wait right there. At that moment, he has a memory of what his body was like before all this. Then he starts wondering if what he saw before wasn't an illusion. He reflects that he's seen rewards like abilities, but never a divine blessing. Being one that reverses time, this was something surreal to him. Still in front of the mirror, he keeps thinking about what he should do. Deciding what to do, he figures it's better to go ask someone for help right away. Calling for Mr. Guak Pil-seong, the nurse enters the room to see him. Seeing the empty bed, she wonders where he could have gone. Arriving at another place, he stands still in front of a tall building. Reflecting, he comments that it's been a decade since he was at the association. Entering the building, he notices the place has changed quite a bit since then. Approaching a young man, he says he has business to take care of there. Pointing, the man warns that he needs to take a number and wait his turn. Not knowing how to use the machine, he ends up irritating the men behind him in line. Suddenly, a hand grabs his shoulder hard, drawing his attention. At that, a man yells that he's in a hurry and tells the kid to get out of the way. Watching the scene, people comment that this young man just got himself into big trouble. Then the man says he needs to wait in line like everyone else there. Grabbing him, the man asks who he thinks he is to teach him a lesson. Then a larger man appears, ordering the two to stop the fight immediately. Warning seriously, he says that fighting is forbidden inside that association. Recognizing the man, the crowd says he's the hunter, Park Seok Cheon. Taking in the situation, he seems pretty irritated with the local association staff. Complaining, he thinks an S rank shouldn't have to clean up other people's mess. Scared, the man apologizes while everyone comments about the famous hunter. At that, someone comments that he's the true symbol of masculinity present there. Feeling flattered, he thinks he really likes being called that. Analyzing his face, the young man tries to remember where he knows him from. Staring at the young man, the hunter also wonders where he's seen him before. After a moment, he finally remembers the old name, Park Da-bin. Pointing, he asks out loud if his name isn't Park Da-bin. Not understanding, people wonder if he just called the hunter that. Then he asks how long it's been since they've seen each other and how time has passed. With great anger, the hunter stares at the young man without saying a single word. He questions how that brat knows his old and forgotten name. With a smile, he says he has something very important to ask him. Losing his patience, he grabs him by the collar and yells that that's enough. Then he asks who the hell the brat thinks he is to do that. With a smile, he comments that the other got rougher since last time. Then he reminds the hunter that fighting inside there is totally forbidden. Recognizing the mistake, he admits that maybe he got a little too excited. Calling the young man, he orders him to follow so they can go somewhere else. As they walk, he tells the young man he's going to leave a warning. With a threatening look, he warns not to even think about trying to run from him. Seeing the situation, he just sighs, showing a certain weariness with all of this. Changing locations, the two now face each other in a huge training arena. Surprised, he asks when the association installed a facility like that there. At that, he explains that this is an area designated for training fights. Then he asks who he is and how he knows that old name. He introduces himself as Guak Pil-seong, saying that some things left him like this. Noticing the hesitation, he says it looks like the young man won't answer. Saying he tried to resolve things peacefully, he prepares to start the fight now. Advancing, he yells that the other will tell everything after a few blows. But the young man dodges the strike, questioning why he's so nervous. Surprised, he wonders how his attack was dodged so easily. Then the young man advises him to be more relaxed at his advanced age. Saying that's enough fooling around, he becomes intrigued with the mysterious young man. Using his ability, He transforms into a werewolf right in front of him. Fully transformed, he warns that from now on, he'll fight for real. Shouting, he challenges the young man to dodge the next strike that's coming. With a leap, he advances quickly to deliver a new powerful blow. With a quick movement, he manages to stop the werewolf's strike easily. Impressed, he stares at Guak without believing what he just saw. Warning that it's going to hurt, the werewolf prepares an even stronger attack. Leaping toward him, the werewolf advances with a sequence of strikes. Taking the blows, he's hit squarely by the entire sequence of attacks. With the impact, he's thrown hard against the arena wall. The collision creates a huge crater, raising a large cloud of dust. Landing on the ground, the werewolf observes the result of his powerful attack. He then says that maybe he went overboard a bit without even noticing. Coming out of the dust, he says they can't resolve things with words. Flying toward him, the young man advances to deliver a quick counterattack. Shocked, he can't believe his S-rank attack didn't even scratch him. Warning that it's going to hurt, he prepares to deliver a decisive blow. With a single strike, he hits the werewolf square in the face. Being thrown back, he's hurled far with the force of the blow, falling to the ground, already completely defeated. Looking at the body on the ground, he stays silent for a moment. Worried, he wonders if maybe he went overboard a bit with the strength. In a flashback, Park Dabin thought that raw power didn't match beauty. Then he hears his master Guak Pilsong calling for him from afar. Sitting on a pile of monsters, he asks if the boy is feeling all right. Relieved, he calls out to his master, realizing his worldview changed right there. Walking toward him, the master approaches so they can talk better. He then begins to speak about what pure and strong power really is. Saying he needs to exercise more, he calls that beautiful. Back to the present, Park Seok-cheon slowly starts waking up on the ground. Approaching him, Guak asks if the man is finally waking up now. Opening his eyes, he calls for his master, still feeling quite confused. Seeing he's all right, the boy says luckily, he seems alive. He then asks if he taught him to attack someone he hadn't seen in 10 years. Asking how he is, he says it looks like he didn't get beat up enough. After hearing everything, he understands what happened and mentions the blessing. Explaining, the other says the blessing is a passive ability that's always active. Saying it's the first time he's heard this, he doesn't seem to know much. Shirtless, the other apologizes for not having been much help. Irritated, he yells, telling the other to put on some clothes so they can talk. Telling him not to worry, he says he's happy to be young. Then he suggests the master should go back to being the famous hunter he was before. With a serious look, he calls him by his old name, Dabin. He then warns that he prefers no one knows he's finally returned. Questioning the reason, he asks why he retired without telling anyone. Bringing up the past, he mentions names of old companions, leaving the other shocked. With a sad look, he responds that it would be impossible to forget any of them. Remembering the past, he tells how they all sacrificed themselves to protect him. Shouting, he says he would do the same because the master was important to everyone. He then falls silent, just waiting for the rest of the full explanation. Continuing, he explains that his existence became too important to people. Questioning, he asks if it was right for an old man to live sacrificing the young. In a flashback, he says he fears the same will happen if he returns. Hearing the master, he agrees to keep his identity secret for now. Then he asks what the master's plans for the future are now. At that, Guak says he actually has a favor to ask of him at that moment. Changing scenes, he shows his D-rank bracelet on his wrist. Now in the forest, he comments that this makes identifying everyone's ranks easier. He then falls silent for a moment, just staring at the area around him. Back to the conversation, he invites him to participate in a D-rank raid. Explaining, he says he has concerns about an investigation, and his help would be great. For any situation, he says he'd like to have his strength, and Guak agrees. Now in the forest, he wonders what situation would need his great help. Suddenly, a hunter bumps into him and yells, telling the kid to get out of the way. Irritated, he says the man should apologize, but the other ignores him. Then a friend warns that a D-rank newbie shouldn't block the path. With a smile, he says it seems to be his first raid and tells him to back off. Laughing, the man shouts that the brat got lucky and keeps walking. Irritated, he says there are always fools who judge others by appearance. Approaching, a man tells him not to worry, as they always intimidate newbies. Asking his name, he introduces himself as Kim Cholman and extends his hand. Shaking his hand, he introduces himself as Guak Pilseong, and the other is surprised. Commenting on his appearance, the man asks how old he currently is. Almost answering 80, he quickly corrects himself and says he's 18. Laughing, the man says he's the same age as his beloved son. With a smile, he thinks that if he had a son, he'd be his age. At that, two female hunters approach, and one of the men comments on their beauty. One of them introduces herself as Park Ji-hyun and says her friend's name. Approaching him, the girl asks if his name is Gwak Pilsung. Getting quite close, she says it's a pleasure to meet him for the raid. Startled, he asks what she's doing and she says it's her greeting. Then the other hunter approaches, calling out Pilseung's name and staring at him. With a smile, the man praises his youth, leaving him quite irritated. At that, he hears someone calling him, but doesn't recognize the person approaching. Suddenly, a man in a suit appears in front of the group of hunters. Staring at the man, he asks who he is and what he's doing there. Introducing himself, he says he's Kim Taejin, the leader of that day's raid. With a wave, he greets him, and the leader says he hopes they'll work well together. Then the leader asks what his relationship is with the hunter Park Seokcheon. Awkwardly, he makes up that he's a friend of the cousin of a relative's brother-in-law. With a shout, the leader orders all hunters to gather immediately. He announces he'll start the briefing before they enter the D-rank gate. Before the gate, he introduces himself again as the leader of that specific raid. Speaking to the group, he says there are newly awakened hunters. He believes all D-rank hunters have the potential to climb higher. At that, he comments that he knows some there are about to be promoted. Finishing up, he warns that D-rank dungeons can be quite unpredictable for everyone. Therefore, he orders everyone to follow his commands for the raid's success. Mocking, one of the hunters thinks it's all overkill for a D-rank dungeon. Responding, he says it's wise to be prepared, leaving the other quite irritated. Shouting, the hunter tells him to shut up and stop the conversation. Then their leader asks what a newbie would know about fighting in dungeons. Saying the experienced should lead, he ends the discussion among the hunters. While the others praise the leader, he just sighs, thinking they're all fools. Finishing the conversation, the leader says the briefing had finally ended there. With a smile, he invites everyone to finally enter the dangerous dungeon together. Entering the portal, they come face to face with a large desert. Park Ji-hyun complains it was too hot, and the other hunter says they'll finish that dungeon quickly. Gwak complains that it was a desert. Kim Taejun says he'll wait for everyone to continue. One of the hunters says after this, we'll have a cold drink and eat pork belly, and the other says he'll find a place for them to do that. And Gwak says, how can they be so distracted like this? Then he stops for a moment and remembers Park Seok. Park Seok says it would be easy to pass through the gate entrance since it's small, but it's being harder than I expected. But Gwak warns him it's always good to be cautious when entering a dungeon. Gwak had already defeated the boss and tells Park to follow his instructions. He remembers that in the old days, the difficulty of dungeons was judged only by the gate's size, so everyone acted cautiously until conquering them. And now that we can know the dungeon's rank before entering, no one seems nervous anymore. Gwak wonders if that's how things work nowadays, while calling the leader. He asks the leader how difficult this D-level dungeon was, and the leader asks if that was his first dungeon entry. The leader answers that that dungeon was for D-level hunters, and tells Gwak he doesn't need to worry too much, because even C-class hunters like me participate as leaders, as a precaution. Gwak says they seem to have quite an efficient layout. He asks the leader what if the dungeon ends up being harder than expected, and the leader is startled by this question. But another hunter cuts them off, calling his attention. While smiling, he says if Gwak is so scared, he can go back through the gate he just entered and no one will say a word. And his friend says not to scare the poor kid. Already inside the dungeon, he tells the leader not to worry so much. Questioning him, he asks how the guy can be so confident in there. With a smile, he says there are no reports of measurement errors. Still suspicious, he asks if that's really true and the leader confirms it. Irritated, the other hunter says that's why rookies are such a problem. Staring at the man, he asks why he's been grumbling so much since earlier. Grabbing his collar, the man yells, asking what he just said. Calmly, he advises him not to be so noisy inside a dungeon. Laughing, the other hunters start mocking the situation that was happening. With a smile, he says that's how a rookie should act. Then he approaches and asks if the man really wants to know the reason. Suddenly, a giant cobra emerges from above, surprising everyone there. Startled, the man screams that a monster appeared and goes into total panic. In disbelief, he wonders how this can be happening to them. With a roar, the cobra prepares to attack the group of hunters. Still panicking, he stares at the giant cobra approaching closer and closer. With a quick movement, a precise strike cuts off the monster's head. Revealing himself, he appears after defeating the giant cobra with a single blow. At that, the monster's body falls lifeless to the ground, startling the hunter. Shocked, he wonders how that was done so quickly. Turning around, he says the man better follow his advice and shut up. He explains that noisy people are always the first target of the monsters there. Then he turns and heads back to the group, leaving the man behind. With great anger, he wonders how dare he, grinding his teeth in hatred. Calling for the leader, Ji-hyun approaches to speak with him. She asks if that monster is really rank D, because it seems stronger. Analyzing the cobra, Taejin says that's definitely very strange. He then says the monster looks more like a rank C creature. With a bad feeling, he starts to think something is very wrong. In a cave, A girl asks what they should do from now on. Asking her not to worry, he says everything will be fine. Then she suggests they ask for help from the adults outside. Disagreeing, he says they can't trust the adults, remembering the danger outside. She insists this isn't the time for stubbornness, but he remains unyielding. Suddenly, a loud noise startles them both, putting them on maximum alert. At that, a monster appears in the opening, roaring at the two hidden youths. Staring at them, the monster observes the two with a totally terrifying look. Terrified, they're paralyzed with fear, unable to have any reaction there. Then, a desperate scream is heard coming from outside that cave. Walking through the dungeon, the group of hunters explores the place cautiously. Leading the way, he and the other two hunters move forward. He then falls silent for a moment, just reflecting on the situation. In a flashback, the huntress questions if the monster is really rank D. Worried, he feels he can't shake the feeling of discomfort that dominates him. Looking back, he sees Guac and remembers the conversation they had. He then wonders how a rookie on his first raid would defeat him. Back to the present, he questions whether the dungeon is above rank D. Shaking his head, he tries to push away these negative thoughts surrounding him. He concludes it must be his imagination, since there's never been an error before. Tired, the other hunter starts breathing deeply, already exhausted from walking. Shouting, he calls for the leader and asks how much longer they'll walk. Seeing that everyone is tired, he says they'll take a short break there. With a sigh, he approaches the leader, disappointed with the whole situation. Complaining, a hunter says young people today have no grit at all. Suddenly, he notices the weather has become cloudy and wonders why. At that, a giant shadow appears and a loud noise startles everyone there. Then, a giant cobra monster appears, leaving the hunter in total panic. Shouting, the leader warns that one seems to be the boss and tells everyone to prepare. Floating, the giant cobra prepares to attack the group of hunters. With anger, he turns to Guac, ready to get revenge for the humiliation. Calling the boy, he says he embarrassed him earlier in front of everyone. Running, he yells that he can handle that monster alone and charges forward. Desperate, the leader yells for him to be careful, as the situation is very dangerous. With a smile, he tells the guy to watch closely and that he'll defeat the boss. Shouting, he advances toward the monster, ready to deliver his strike. With a jump, he attacks the giant cobra, yelling for it to die. Delivering a powerful blow, he hits the monster's body with his axe. At that, his weapon breaks and he's shocked by the monster's strength. Thinking, he says the attack didn't work, and that attacking recklessly is foolish. Observing, he sees the hunter standing still while thinking his mindset is wrong. Facing the monster, the cobra prepares to attack the hunter who's paralyzed. With fear, he thinks he's screwed and there's no way to escape anymore. Then the cobra rapidly advances to attack the hunter with its giant mouth. With a quick movement, the leader saves him, hitting the hunter and pushing him. Worried, he asks if the hunter is okay after everything that happened. Observing the scene, he realizes the hunter seems to be fine and feels relieved. Ordering everyone to stay back, he prepares to face the monster alone. As the only rank C hunter, he says he needs to defeat the monster there. Running, he advances toward the cobra to deliver his first attack. Shouting, he leaps and prepares for a powerful blow against the monster. With his sword, he lands a direct hit on the monster's body. Realizing the ineffectiveness, he sees his attack isn't working either. Shouting, he remembers he needs to aim for the head to defeat it. Focused, he prepares to attack the weak point of the giant monster. Looking at the head, he wonders if he can hit that specific point. Running across the monster's body, he advances to attack the cobra's head. Leaping, he prepares to deliver the final blow against the monster. Shouting, he orders the creature to die and attacks with all his strength. With a precise strike, he hits the cobra's head with his sword. Falling to the ground, the monster's head separates from the body and spurts blood. Happy, the hunters celebrate that they finally managed to defeat the strong monster. Approaching, he asks if the leader is okay, and he says yes. Thanking, he says he survived and defeated the boss thanks to Guac Pilseong. Then, one of the huntresses asks if the dungeon has finally been cleared by them. With doubt, he looks around, but doesn't see any apparent change. Looking around, she asks why nothing is happening at that moment. Finding it strange, he says a message should appear after the dungeon is cleared. Worried, he wonders what's happening and if something could have gone wrong. At that, a giant stone monster emerges, leaving the group leader shocked. In disbelief, he realizes the monster they defeated wasn't the real boss. Seeing the confusion, he asks if the leader still hasn't understood the situation. He then insists, asking if the leader still believes it's a rank D dungeon. Shocked, he can't believe the association got the difficulty rating wrong. Suddenly, several other creatures emerge, surrounding the group from all sides. Desperate, a hunter warns that there are monsters right behind them and asks what to do. Thinking, he concludes that the dungeon is at least rank C or maybe even higher. Shouting, he orders everyone to fall back as they have no choice but to run. He decides that the best thing is to get out of the dungeon and call for support teleport immediately. He stays silent, just observing the leader's quick decision. With a smile, he thinks the leader is a capable and competent guy. Running, the group of hunters tries to escape from the monsters that appeared there. Exhausted, he stops and takes a deep breath, already out of breath to keep running. Irritated, he shouts at the leader, questioning why a rank C is running away. Explaining the situation, the leader says the monsters are rank C or higher. Outraged, he says that's ridiculous and questions the association's assessment. He remembers that if the noise continues, more monsters will gather at that location. Suddenly, he hears a sound and screams desperately at what he sees. Shocked, he stares at the entrance to a cave, unable to move from there. Coming out of the cave, a girl walks slowly and asks everyone for help. Worried, Ji-hyun runs to her and asks if she's okay and what happened. Asking for help, she says her friend is in danger and needs rescue. She explains that they were attacked by a monster and her friend got hurt. Thinking, the leader wonders how a child ended up in that dungeon. Then he asks how she got there, since she doesn't seem to be a hunter. She tells him a guy mentioned a part-time job inside the dungeon. The hunter understands and calls them both grave robbers, leaving them confused. Pointing, he accuses them of being the grave robbers that all the rumors talk about. Not understanding, Guak asks what looters are, and the leader explains to him. Watching the girls, he thinks it's sad to see children risking their lives like this. Shouting, the man says the dungeon was destabilized because of the two girls. Disagreeing, the leader says the monsters are a different problem from the children there. Not knowing what to do, one of the hunters asks the leader what the next step is. Discussing, they debate whether or not to save the children in that situation. Thoughtful, the leader faces the dilemma, but is interrupted before deciding. Calling the leader, he volunteers to go rescue the children alone. Worried, the leader says the idea is too risky for him. He then questions if they should abandon the children and suggests he go alone. With a smile, the other hunter says he won't stop him from dying. Asking the leader to take the others, he says he'll save the children. Impressed, the leader realizes that trusting the guy is the best option there. Agreeing with the plan, he says he'll leave everything in Guak's hands. Approaching the girls, he says he'll carry the one who's hurt. Calling to him, the girl approaches and stares at him with a serious look. With hope, she asks if he's really going to be able to save her friend. With a smile, he guarantees he'll save her, no matter what happens. Then, he prepares himself while the rest of the group continues on their way. Mocking, the hunter says the brat is determined to die alone there. With a smile, he says goodbye to the girls, ready for the rescue. Worried, she wonders if he'll be okay alone on that mission. Thinking, the leader feels that this seems like a very reckless bet to make, but he concludes that there's no other choice but to bet on this chance. Inside the cave, the boy laments, saying those con artists tricked them. Angrily, he says they were fooled and he should have known better. In a flashback, the man says this is easy money for the two of them. He explains they just need to hide and that the dungeon has no danger. With a smile, he encourages them, saying they don't need to worry. Guaranteeing it's a unique opportunity, he says they hit the jackpot. Even scared, the boy agrees and says he'll do what was asked. Back to the present, he wonders if his friend Yoon-soo is okay. Suddenly, he hears a noise and sees a light at the cave entrance. Grabbing a piece of wood, he prepares to defend himself from any threat. Startled, he stands up and stays alert, waiting for what's to come. Then he sees his friend and calls her by name, surprised by her appearance. Worried, she asks if he's okay, calling his name out loud. Seeing a man with her, he asks who it is. Feeling confused, she explains that he's a hunter who came to save them from danger. Questioning, he asks if that kid is really a real hunter. Irritated, he hits him and shouts asking who he's calling a kid. Scolding, he says a student should be at home studying. The girl explains she ran away from home and had no choice but to accept. Angrily, he thinks it's unbelievable that they tricked those poor children. Calling the two, he tells them to go join the others to get out. Suddenly, a monster appears at the cave exit, blocking their way. Terrified, they face the giant snake, which prepares to attack the group. Screaming, the girl warns that a monster is in front of them. Desperate, irritated, the boy says he thought they had managed to escape the danger. Asking them to go, he says his leg is injured, but she refuses to leave. With a smile, he tells them not to worry, because he won't leave them behind. Shouting, he asks what the hunter is doing and tells him to run. Commenting, he says the boy has a lot of audacity for someone so young. He then says that children should be protected by adults, leaving the boy shocked. Shouting, he guarantees he'll protect them and advances against the giant monster. Meanwhile, the other hunters keep running through the dungeon, searching for the exit. Complaining, one of them says it sucks to run without even fighting the monsters. Asking them to hold on, the leader says they're almost at their destination. Worried, he wonders if the other group members are okay on their own. He then starts questioning whether his decision to retreat was the right one. Exhausted, a hunter says the exit gate should be around here. Looking at the spot, he's surprised, not understanding what happened there. Desperate, he screams for the leader, calling his attention to the big problem. Shouting, he warns everyone that the dungeon gate is disappearing. As the gate closes, he laments that they're trapped in there. Shocked, the leader and the other hunters stare at the spot, unable to believe what they're seeing. Screaming, the man asks what's happening and what they should do. Thinking, the leader says the gate closing means the dungeon has gone berserk. He concludes it's too early for this since the gate is already closed. Blaming the kids, he wonders if they triggered the dungeon early. Worried, a hunter asks the leader what they should do next. Asking for calm, he says the gate will reopen once they clear the dungeon. Shouting, the other hunter says they can't clear a rank C dungeon. Scared, the hunter asks if this means they're trapped forever. Explaining the situation, he says the gate might reopen, but it'll be risky. With a sigh, he asks everyone to calm down and assess the situation. Suddenly, he notices something and looks to the side, sensing a presence. Seeing the monsters, he realizes the group is surrounded on all sides. Frightened, they wonder when this happened and how they didn't notice before. Shouting, the leader tells everyone to prepare for battle against the monsters. Counting the enemies, he sees there are 5 monsters total to face. He then says that with strategy, even rank Ds can handle them. Asking for support, he says he'll take the lead in the attack against the creatures. With his axe, the other hunter prepares for battle, but seems hesitant. Screaming, he charges forward and prepares to attack the first monster that appears. Leaping, he moves to attack the 2 snakes in front of him. With a quick strike, he cuts off one of their heads without any difficulty. Then he notices a monster behind him and blocks the attack. Screaming, Yunji offers to help the leader in battle. Right then, she attacks the monster and draws its attention. Shouting, the leader says her opponent is him and defends her. Advancing, he attacks the giant cobra and cuts off its head with one strike. Falling to the ground, the cobra's head separates, and he defeats another one. Looking back, he sees that now only 3 monsters remain to defeat. Thinking, he says it's tough, but the situation is still manageable. With a smile, the other hunter says a rank C monster is no big deal. Suddenly, he stops and looks back, sensing something strange happening there. Then the cobra heads regenerate, transforming into a hydra. Shocked, he wonders what that is and if it could be the boss. The leader questions why the boss would be here, so close to the entrance gate. Then, the monster attacks and throws the hunters away with its strength. Fallen on the ground, a hunter screams and desperately begs his leader for help. Seeing his men in danger, he runs to try to help them escape. Screaming for the leader, the hunter watches the scene, completely terrified by everything. Hearing the call, he looks back and sees the cobra approaching. With a quick strike, one of the hunters hits the monster's head dead on. Turning around, the hydra faces the hunter, preparing to attack next. Screaming, she tells the leader to attack the monster, and he charges forward. With a powerful strike, he cuts off one of the hydra's heads with his sword. Falling to the ground, the monster's head separates, and he feels relieved. Celebrating, he says he managed to cut off one of the giant creature's heads. Thinking, he says only 2 more to go, but notices something strange happening. Suddenly, the severed head starts to regenerate right in front of him. With a roar, the head forms, and he's shocked by the scene. Facing the hydra, he realizes his effort was in vain and despairs. He then realizes he made a mistake thinking the head was the weak point. Preparing himself, he turns to face the monster once more. Being attacked, he tries to defend himself, but is hit head-on by the monster. With the blow, he's thrown hard against the wall. Worried, the hunter screams for the leader, seeing that he's badly injured. Turning around, the monster faces her, preparing to attack next. Terrified, she's paralyzed with fear, unable to react to the monster. Advancing, the hydra attacks, but she's saved by someone who pulls her. Shocked, she's held by Guac, who protects her from the monster's attack. Asking her to hold on, he grips her firmly, ready for battle. With a leap, he moves her away from danger, placing himself in front of the monster. Holding the hunter, he faces the giant hydra, preparing to fight. Asking if she's okay, he looks at her with a smile and she recognizes him. With a smile, he says she worked hard and that she can leave it to him. Pulling back with the hunter, he prepares for battle against the monster. With a smile, he asks if she got hurt, and she says no. Seeing the scene, the leader recognizes him, calling out the name Guac Pilsung. Worried, he asks about the children and why Guac is there now. With a smile, he warns that the children are safe, and there's no need to worry. He then says that, more importantly, they have a bigger problem to solve. Looking at the Hydra, he says a dungeon break is imminent. Apologizing, the leader admits his judgment of the situation was wrong. He says it's all right, and the fault wasn't the leader's. After all, he concludes the situation was too much for a rank C hunter. Praising him, he says the leader worked hard and did enough there. Facing the Hydra, he prepares to finally begin the battle against the monster. With a smile, he says he'll take over the fight from that moment on. Drawing his knife, he advances toward the monster with a quick movement. Running, he prepares to attack the giant Hydra with all his strength. Jumping, he dodges the monster's attack and prepares to counter. With a quick strike, he cuts off the monster's head, but it regenerates. With a roar, the Hydra recovers and stares at him, ready to attack again. Shouting, the leader warns that it's useless as the creature's head regenerates. Seeing the scene, the Hydra regenerates once more, ready to continue. Irritated, he says the leader should have warned him about the monster's ability. Desperate, the hunter says they're doomed and they're going to die there. Thinking, the leader wonders if this is the end for all of them. With a smile, he asks if they're already thinking about giving up the fight. He then says, giving up is only for counting cabbages, leaving everyone confused. Shocked, the hunter wonders if he's serious in that situation. Agreeing with him, the leader stands up, ready to fight again. Shouting, he says it's too early to give up and they'll fight together. He then says he'll support Guac, but is warned not to overdo it. With a smile, he says he's fine, and they don't need to worry. In silence, they observe the scene, still not knowing what to do. Determined, they stand up and say they'll help in the battle too. With a smile, he says that's the spirit he likes. Asking them not to give up, he turns and faces the giant Hydra. He then says if they keep attacking, they'll find the weak point. Asking for cover, he prepares to attack the monster with everything. Shouting, he advances toward the Hydra, ready for the fight. Suddenly, the Hydra prepares to spit a powerful attack at him. Frightened, the leader shouts that the monster is about to attack with everything. With a fire attack, the Hydra hits him dead on with its breath. Worried, the leader shouts Guac's name, seeing the desperate scene. Being thrown backward, he's hit square by the fire explosion. After the attack, the Hydra's heads roar, victorious with the blow. In the midst of the fire, he stands up, ready to continue the battle. Shouting, he says the monster's attack is useless against him. Jumping, he dodges another attack and prepares to counter. With a spinning strike, he cuts off all three of the Hydra's heads at once. With that, the Hydra's body falls to the ground, finally defeated by him. Shocked, the hunter asks if he's really a rank D like all of them. Sighing, he breathes deeply, feeling the fatigue from the intense battle he fought. With a serious look, he faces the smoke rising from the monster's body. He then falls silent, just watching the situation unfold before him. Irritated, he says the continuous regeneration of that creature is frustrating. Suddenly, he notices something strange and looks to the side, sensing a presence. Observing, he sees the monster's body bubbling and preparing to regenerate. With a smile, he says that, in that case, he has a plan to act. Jumping, he scales the cavern wall and prepares for an attack from above. Climbing the mountain, he cuts a rock to fall on top of the Hydra. The hunter and the others look at the scene, still in shock. Suddenly, a system window appears, surprising all the hunters. The message informs that the dungeon has been cleared and she's left speechless. Happy, everyone celebrates, shouting that they finally managed to clear the dungeon. With a smile, the leader says they really managed to overcome the challenge. Grateful, they acknowledge they wouldn't have survived without Guac's help. With that, the dungeon gate reappears, opening in front of everyone. On the other side, Guac appears and asks if everyone is okay and safe. With a smile, the leader responds yes, and thanks him for all the help. With a smile, he calls everyone to finally go home and rest. At the Blue Sky Guild, a man carefully reviews a report. Pointing at it, he asks what this absurd report he received is all about. Questioning, he can't believe a rank D hunter cleared the dungeon alone. In another room, Hunter Kim Tae-jun listens to his superior's questions. Confirming, he says the report he wrote is completely true. He then insists they should recruit Guac Pilseong to the guild. Angrily, the superior says that's enough of that conversation and ends the discussion. He questions whether such a talented hunter would remain unknown for so long. Speechless, the hunter doesn't know what to answer and falls silent. Ordering him out, the man says he'll pretend he never saw the report. Understanding the order, he leaves the room, leaving the superior alone. Sitting in his chair, the man turns and looks to the side. He then falls silent for a moment, just reflecting on everything. With a sigh, he turns and prepares to speak with someone. Tired, he says the old man can come out and show himself now. Coughing, he emerges from behind the door, revealing himself to the guild master. Asking if the hunter has left, he's told yes, and that there are no problems. The guild master says he caused quite a commotion with his actions. Irritated, he questions whether he should have stood by while people died there. Tired, the master says the incident exceeded his expectations and asks about the report. He confirms there's a problem with the dungeon ranking and that the association knows. Saying there's another problem, he leaves the guild master curious. He reveals that the association is behind the scammers who deceived the children. Shocked, the master asks if this is true and how he discovered everything. With a smile, he says he raided their base and uncovered the truth. Angrily, the guild master punches the desk, calling them scoundrels. He concludes the association won't admit their mistakes to maintain their authority. Agreeing, he says that's probably true and expects a solution. Questioning, he asks if they're just going to stand by and watch it all. Explaining the situation, the master says unfortunately they don't have enough evidence. He says the association's power has grown and they need to be cautious. With a smile, the master reminds him he always said, haste makes waste. Agreeing, he says they need to be careful and analyze the raid records. He then says that's difficult, leaving Guak confused by the response. The master reminds him that as a rank D, he can't access those records. Shocked, he remembers that only rank C or higher can view the records. Complaining, he says it's exhausting having to keep his identity secret. With a smile, the master says it's the perfect moment for something. He then hands a paper to Guak, leaving him curious about the content. Changing scenes, we see the Hunters Association with many hunters in line. A long line forms at the association entrance for the promotion exam. An instructor asks all exam participants to line up in order. In line, the huntress waits, looking nervous about the exam she's taking. She thinks it's her first exam and that gaining experience is what matters. Looking around, she wonders if that boy will also take the exam. Imagining an encounter, she wonders if this would be their destiny. Screaming, she's embarrassed by her own thoughts and tries to calm down. Complaining about the crowd, she notices someone cutting in line in front of her. Yelling, she tells the man to keep order and wait in line like everyone else. With a smile, he calls her miss, mocking her attitude. Showing his bracelet, he asks if she can't see what he has. Shocked, she realizes he's a rank B hunter by his red bracelet. With a serious look, he stares at her, ready to intimidate her with his power. He then points to her bracelet and says she appears to be rank D. Irritated, she says his rank doesn't mean he can act like this. Approaching her, he says in the hunter's world, things are different. With a snap of his fingers, he says power equals authority. He then asks if she understands, leaving her speechless and afraid. Suddenly, he stops and stares at her, changing the subject and expression. With a smile, he says that up close, she's his type. Getting near her, he asks if she happens to have a boyfriend. Suddenly, another hand appears and grabs his wrist forcefully. At that moment, Guak asks what the reason for the commotion is. Looking at the newcomer, she seems surprised by his appearance. Seeing this, he wonders if she already had a boyfriend then, but she quickly denies everything, saying it's not what he thinks. He then falls silent for an instant, just observing the situation. Questioning internally, he wonders if the guy is also a rank D. Pointing to his arm, he asks if he can't see the rank B emblem. Responding calmly, he says he can see the emblem perfectly well. Still, he continues with a smirk, finding all of this interesting. Then he asks how he dares hold his arm like that without fear. Firmly, he continues holding the man's arm, who can't break free. He then realizes he tried to pull away, but the arm didn't move. At that, he questions whether this guy is really a rank D hunter. Touching his shoulder, a person asks Hunter Bak Sang-hyuk to stop. Turning abruptly, he yells, asking who else wants to challenge him in this mess. But at that moment, two security guards from the venue appear behind him. Carrying the man, they ask him to keep order, or he'll have to leave. While being dragged away, he yells, saying he'll remember everyone there. Seeing the scene, the guy calmly comments that the man is an idiot. She then turns and thanks him for helping with the situation. Confirming yes, she says exams are rare, and she decided to try. Then she admits she might still be too weak for rank C. At that, he touches her shoulder to get her attention. Saying not to worry, he tells her she'll do well. She awkwardly agrees, wondering why her heart is racing so much. Reflecting, she thinks how he gives off an adult vibe being so young. He then offers a small box, asking her to accept it. Explaining he was saving it, he decides to give it to her as a gift. Saying eating something sweet can help relax, he says goodbye to her. Wishing her good luck on the exam, he then turns and starts to walk away. Left alone, she observes the gift she just received from the unknown guy. Then she questions who would actually want a gift like that. Taking a bite, she thinks he has the taste of an old man. While she eats, a woman observes the entire scene from an upper floor. Leaning over, she comments it would have been a great show if they had fought. With a smile on her face, she seems to know something that's coming. Then she says that either way, they'll meet him again very soon. Far from there, the man who caused the fight seems very angry. Looking at his own wrist, he wonders what's up with that guy. Introducing himself to everyone, a man says he's the examiner Kim Sung-jun. Standing on a stage, he explains that the session will be about the exam. Listening attentively, the participants seem a bit anxious about the test rules. He explains that first, two hunters of the same rank will duel in pairs. Then he adds that the match ends when one can no longer fight. Additionally, The winner will be evaluated in a duel with a supervisor. One of the hunters then questions if he won't be promoted if he loses the fight. Answering the question, he says that promotion is still possible without victory. Finishing the explanation, he wishes good luck to all the hunters present. With his back to everyone, a bald man gives a somewhat sinister laugh. Turning forward, he says that finally the big day has arrived for him. Remembering a dungeon, he says his magic power has gotten much stronger. Surrounded by other hunters, he thanks the boy for clearing the dungeon. With a confident smile, he wonders who his opponent in the fight will be. To his surprise, he sees that his opponent is precisely the guy in the hat. Touching his opponent's chin, he asks him to take good care of him today. Realizing the situation, the man laments, saying goodbye to his rank promotion. Switching to another arena, a huntress fires a powerful strike against her opponent. Even with his arm injured, the man continues holding his dagger and facing her. Then she prepares her bow again, aiming with great concentration for the next strike. Firing the arrow, a swift strike advances in the direction of the hunter in the cap. At that moment, the guy gets a shocked expression seeing the strike. Being hit, he can't avoid the powerful strike coming in his direction. With the impact, his body is thrown backward with great violence. Completely defeated, he lies on the arena floor unable to move. Announcing the result, the examiner declares that the huntress Kim Ji-hyun has won. Still processing the victory, she stays silent looking at her bow. Then she wonders how that happened and if she was always so strong. Coming from behind, the guy says it seems she managed to win her fight. She then asks him if he was also victorious in his combat. In the other arena, the examiner asks the defeated hunter to finally get out of the way. Talking with the guy, she tells him that something seems a bit strange. Looking at her own hand, she says she suddenly feels incredibly strong. With a smile, he says that's natural because of the last dungeon. He then asks if she knows that you also absorb power from monsters. Explaining better, he says that stronger dungeons guarantee more magic power. Completing the reasoning, he states that's why she feels stronger. Very excited, she realizes that this way she can become a C-rank hunter quickly. Interrupting her, he shouts for her to wait, leaving the girl very startled. He then says that surviving the last dungeon was simply a stroke of luck. Warning about the danger, he says that kind of thinking is very dangerous. While taking the scolding, she wonders why she feels reprimanded by him. Arriving suddenly, a woman asks what the reason for all that commotion is. Smiling, she asks if by any chance they're having a couple's quarrel. Shouting, he denies everything and says he was just reprimanding the girl for her ideas. Apologizing, he says he's very sorry if they were making too much noise. With a smile, she responds saying that he's a very interesting person. Calling him by name, she asks if he's the hunter Guak Pil Seong. Completely surprised, he asks if she happens to know him from somewhere. Recognizing the woman, he wonders what the S-rank huntress is doing there. Introducing herself, she says she's Yu Sun Young, the person in charge of the promotion test. Still confused, he asks if she has any business to deal with him. Looking at him, she says she heard a very interesting rumor recently. She then tells the rumor about a newbie who cleared a dungeon alone. Hearing the conversation, the people around wonder if he's the protagonist. Worried, he asks the real reason she's looking for him there. At that moment, she offers him the chance to be promoted to B rank. Then she says it seems like a tempting offer if the feat is true. Refusing the offer, he says he's satisfied, but the girl beside him celebrates. Suddenly, a man approaches saying that then he'll be his opponent. Remembering the rules, he says that for the B exam, you need to fight with a hunter. At that, the guy remembers the encounter he had with him a little earlier. With a smile, he says he didn't expect the hunter from the rumors to be him. Observing the man, the others comment that his skills are almost A-rank level. Thanking for the help, she ignores the guy who tries to refuse the promotion test. Advancing quickly, he delivers a powerful strike with the tip of his spear, but the guy manages to dodge narrowly, evading the strike at the last second. Seeing that he dodged, he asks if that means he has the skills for the exam. Complaining about the attitude, he says he didn't even agree to take the test yet. He then responds that it's disappointing to see him complain before the game even begins. With a serious look, he states that he won't allow an arrogant kid to advance. Then he warns not to blame him if he ends up dying during the exam. Observing the scene, the woman thinks he would be a great resource with another personality. Standing before the situation, Guak seems to ponder what he's going to do now. He then asks if there isn't a way to make him a decent person. Confused, the hunter asks what he's doing with the tip of the weapon. Distant from his opponent, he responds that he's just thinking about the situation. With a smile, he says he's thinking of a way to make him human. Irritated, he shouts that this guy won't die so easily in his hands. Jumping very high, he launches a powerful strike in the direction of his adversary. Still in the same place, Guak awaits the strike to arrive without moving. In a quick movement, he manages to stop the strike using only one hand. Seeing the scene, everyone in the audience is completely shocked by what happened. After a moment, he says he finally managed to decide what to do. He then warns that he's going to beat him up a bit and then think about the rest. Gripping his opponent's spear, The two lock eyes in the middle of the combat arena. Furious, he calls him an arrogant son of a bitch without hesitation. Saying he'll find out, the young man prepares to start the confrontation. Seeing this, the hunter's face fills with complete shock. Suddenly, he has a terrifying vision of a giant, menacing creature. Frightened by what he saw, he backs away several steps from his opponent. Kneeling, he wonders what that was, feeling more helpless than ever. With a smile, the young man comments that his senses are pretty sharp. Looking at the woman, he seems determined not to embarrass himself anymore. Thinking to himself, he says he can't back down against a mere D rank. Activating his abilities, he increases his strength and also his movement speed. Watching the scene, the woman comments that he's finally going to fight seriously. She then says she hopes not to be disappointed by the hunter's performance. He states the effect lasts 5 minutes and he'll end it all quickly. Declaring he's going all out, he charges forward, but the young man makes a gesture. Pointing at his face, the young man stares at him in a very threatening way. Then he says that for a brat, the only cure is a good beating. With a single strike, he hits his opponent's forehead with tremendous force. Staggering back a few steps, the man seems dazed and doesn't understand what happened. Completely confused, he wonders how that could have happened so suddenly. Warning that it's not over, he prepares to attack with a furious look, but the young man lands another hit, throwing him far with a single move. Hitting the ground, the hunter is left stunned by the impact of the blow. He then asks if he intends to continue, or if he'll admit defeat. Shouting that he refuses, he gets up and prepares to attack again. Seeing this, the young man comments that the blows weren't enough for him. At that moment, the woman interrupts, saying that's enough of all this chaos. She then says the result is already clear, calling him by name. Shouting, he tells her not to make him laugh because he hasn't lost the fight yet. Sighing, she comments that a man who's only stubborn is quite unpleasant. With a quick movement, the woman advances and lands a direct hit on the hunter. She then says he's done all he could and asks him to leave. Congratulating the young man, she announces he's been promoted to B-rank hunter. He then asks if she perhaps already knew he would manage to win. Getting closer to him, she says she has high standards for choosing men. Then she says she'd like to discuss something with him in her laboratory. Agreeing, he says that's fine and he'll see what her scheme is. With a smile, she then asks if they can head to the location now. Changing scenes, she shows her laboratory and apologizes for the mess in the place. Pointing to the fridge, she offers him something to drink if he wants. She warns that the things there might not be to his taste, though. Holding a can, he asks what's the reason for seeing him alone in that place. Getting straight to the point, she says she won't waste any more time beating around the bush. She then asks if he's ever considered working directly for the Hunters Association. Surprised, he asks what, not understanding the proposal he just received. Explaining the situation, she says the association needs promising hunters like him. He then asks why she's making this offer to someone like him. With a smile, she says of course there's a reason for all this. Walking through the laboratory, she goes to an object that was covered by a cloth. Removing the cloth, she reveals a type of machine he doesn't recognize. She then explains that's an on-site dungeon classification meter. According to her, it was this device that brought the association to its current status. Thanks to it, hunters can face dungeons according to their level, but she warns the device isn't 100% perfect always. At this, he realizes the association seems to be aware of absolutely everything. She informs him the meter has an error rate of only 0.5%. Then she asks what would happen if the hunters knew about these errors. He says weak hunters wouldn't enter any dangerous dungeons anymore. Agreeing with him, she says that would bring losses in several different aspects. She then concludes by saying all this because of a simple error. He states that people have the right to know about that simple error. She then questions whether it isn't rational to choose the sacrifice of a few for the greater good. Repeating the word, he asks if sacrifice can be considered something rational. Then he argues it's only a sacrifice if the person does it by choice. Hearing his response, she observes him in silence for a brief moment. She then says she can interpret his words as a rejection of the proposal. Asking a favor, he tells her to pass a message to the highest authority. He then turns and sends a not-so-friendly message to the association. With a serious look, she thinks she needs to teach the young man a lesson. Leaving the building, he wonders what he should do from now on. At this, he worries about what Seok Cheon will say if he finds out everything. Suddenly, he stops upon hearing someone calling out to him on the street. The person asks if he's really the hunter named Guak Pil Seong, catching his attention. Turning around, he's surprised to recognize who was standing there in front of him. With a slight smile, the man stares at him after finally finding him again. In another scene, a person hands a report to their direct superior. Sitting in his chair, the man praises, saying it was very well done work. With a smile, he asks if that's the rookie from the dungeon rumors. Confirming the information, he says the young man defeated the other hunter in the test. Looking at the young man's photo, the man repeats aloud the name Guak Pilseong. After hearing the name, he comments that it's a really very good name. Arriving very excited, a man says that his master has finally arrived. Introducing the young man, he mentions that this is the hunter he talked about before. With a serious expression, the man says it seems he's become a celebrity. Asking to be left alone, he says he wants to talk to the young man privately. Leaving the room, he tells them to talk comfortably without him around. Now alone with him, the man stares at him in a very serious way. Then he asks the hunter to explain exactly what happened during the test. Sighing, the young man says it seems they fell into Yu Sun-young's scheme. He then confirms yes, explaining that it was a scheme planned by her. Remembering the woman, he says she's a key figure in the Hunters Association. According to him, her intention was to recruit a hunter who knew about the problem. Besides, the promotion to B rank was to make the recruitment seem natural, but since the offer was refused, he says her plan went wrong. With a smile, he says the woman underestimated him a bit in the situation. Warning that she doesn't give up, the man worries about what she'll do. With a serious expression, he begins to explain his view on the matter. He then invites the young man to join his hunter's guild. Refusing immediately, he shouts no, leaving the man quite surprised by the response. Even so, the man insists, asking him to think more calmly about the proposal. Shouting, he warns that the association is now targeting him because of the refusal. Scratching his ear, he listens to the lecture with an expression of total disinterest. Calling him by name, the young man stares at him very seriously all of a sudden. He then says he's a man who can protect himself in any situation. Recalling, the man says he already fell for the association's tricks once. Sighing, he says there's nothing he can do if that's his wish. Still, he asks the young man to be careful with the association for now. Leaving the office, he walks alone through the lobby, seeming thoughtful about everything. Suddenly, a familiar voice shouts his name, making him stop to look. Out of breath, the young woman says she finally managed to catch up to him after searching so much. Showing her arm, she proudly displays her new hunter emblem. With a big smile, she shows that she was also promoted to C rank. He then congratulates the young woman, who thanks him saying it's all thanks to him. Then he asks if she came all the way there just to tell him this news. Awkwardly, she explains that she just wanted to thank him for the great help he gave. She then takes the opportunity to ask why he was there and if he received an invite. Denying the invite, he says he has no intention of joining guilds. At that moment, a man approaches and asks if he's the hunter Guak Pilseong. Introducing himself, the man says he's Li Huan, responsible for HR at a guild. Confused by the name, they ask about the Northern Lights Guild he mentioned. Explaining that the guild is 11th in the ranking, he invites him to join. After talking about the guild, he asks if the young man has already decided to join. Falling silent, he seems to ponder the invitation he just received. Apologizing, he says he doesn't intend to join any existing guild. Already turning to leave, he says he'll go if there's nothing else. Desperate, the man asks him to at least listen to their guild's presentation. Curious about the proposal, she asks what exactly this presentation would be. Explaining the event, he says they'll give a C-rank weapon for free. Very excited, she asks if it's serious that they'll give a weapon for free. Then she asks what the guild gets, and he says it's the honor. With a confused expression, the young man doesn't understand what's happening there. Pulling him by the arm, she says they need to go there right now. Pointing to the building, he shows where the young woman is taking him. Arriving at the location, she comments that there are many people as expected from a guild. Sighing, he tries to get the young woman's attention, who seems very excited about everything. Asking why she dragged him, he says she could have gone alone. She then remembers that just by listening, they'll get a free item. He finds it suspicious, but she says it's great to get a free weapon. Asking if the guild would lie, she tells him not to be so skeptical. Seeing her naivety, he continues to think that all of this seems very suspicious. Asking them to wait inside, a man guides them to a more private room. Entering the room, they realize there's absolutely nothing inside the place. Standing there, they just watch the man, who starts to laugh in a suspicious way. With a sinister smile, he welcomes them both to his guild. Not understanding the situation, Guak asks what's happening in that place. Suddenly, several other people appear and surround them both from all sides. He then announces that they're going to start their guild membership process. Surrounded, the two of them watch the man and his thugs closing in around them. He then questions how they can detain someone and force them to join the guild. Showing a paper, the man says nothing will happen if they just sign the form. With a serious look, he asks what will happen if they refuse. With a snap of his fingers, the man says the situation would be quite unfortunate. At that moment, all the hunters around them prepare for a possible fight. He then says they'll have to explain why they need to sign the paper. Worried, the girl asks what they should do in this whole situation. Nodding his head, Guak observes the man without saying another word. He then says it's fine and that he'll join their guild. Praising the decision, the man says it looks like everything will go smoothly. Handing over the contract, he explains that the paper has a powerful loyalty curse. But before signing, Guak says he wants to meet the guildmaster. Arguing, he says he needs to know what kind of person the guildmaster is. Agreeing, he says they'll they'll contact the guildmaster for him to meet. In another place, a man on the phone says the job was well done. With a smile on his face, he warns that he'll arrive at the location very soon. Hanging up the phone, he seems quite satisfied with the result of that important call. In the room, the man announces that the guildmaster is on his way to them. At that moment, one of the men behind her gives a somewhat frightening smile. Apologizing, she regrets having dragged him into this whole mess. Saying it wasn't her fault, he explains that the target was always him. She then asks if he really plans to join that suspicious guild. Telling her not to worry, he warns her to protect herself first of all. Nodding her head, she just accepts what he says, still nervous. Suddenly, a very loud laugh echoes throughout the room where they were. Appearing at the door, a man introduces himself as the Guildmaster of Northern Lights. Welcoming them, he enters the room and everyone bows to him. He then asks directly if that man is really the Guildmaster. Irritated, the other man yells for him to show more respect to the Guildmaster. Saying it's alright, he says he likes the young man's frankness. Touching his shoulder, the master says he has high expectations for the future. Grabbing his hand, he asks if the master deceives people this way. He then admits he did everything to manage to make his guild grow, but he regrets they never reached the top 10 due to lack of hunters. Welcoming him again, he hopes the guild will grow even more with him. He then asks if that's all he has to say before dying. Confused, the guild master asks what he just said to him. At that, one of the thugs says he's been arrogant from the beginning. With a quick movement, he grabs the arm of the man who was holding him. With a single blow, he hits the man and throws him to the ground. He then stands still, staring at the others after taking down one of the men. Shouting, the other man asks what he's doing at that moment. He then questions how they can call themselves a guild while threatening people. Pointing, he says they're nothing but bandits hiding behind the title of hunters. Screaming, he calls him a bastard and asks how he dares be so arrogant. He then says everyone there needs a lesson in good manners and etiquette. With a shout, he launches a freezing strike in Guak's direction in front of him. The blow hits directly, freezing his legs and trapping him to the ground. Laughing, he says it serves him right, and that he'll freeze him that way. Observing the ice, Guak doesn't seem to care about the blow he received. With a single movement, he breaks all the ice that trapped him to the ground. Shocked, the man can't believe what he just saw right in front of him. Advancing, he leaps toward the man, who's paralyzed without any reaction. Trying to defend himself, he wonders if he was too careless with his opponent. With a smile, Guak says it's too late now for anything. Landing a blow, he hits him with everything, causing a great impact. With his face injured, the man can't even scream from the blow. Fallen on the ground, the man lies motionless while Guak stares down at him. The master wonders if he was hiding his true strength all along. With an irritated look, he doesn't seem to like that unexpected situation at all. Shouting, he orders all his men to attack Guak at once. With their weapons in hand, the men advance to attack from all sides, but he dodges the first blow, evading with a very quick movement. Parrying the other's blow, he uses the momentum to attack the man in the suit. Hitting the man's face, he takes him down with a strong and precise blow. After taking down the two, he lands on the ground and faces the other opponents. Suddenly, he notices the guildmaster advancing from behind for an attack. The master then plunges his dagger into the ground, launching a powerful strike against him. With a backward leap, he manages to dodge the blow at the last second. Wielding the weapon, the master says that's enough of all that mess. Threatening, he says Guak has no more hope of surviving. Observing the weapon, he says it seems to be a very beautiful and interesting sword. The master then explains it's a legendary weapon from an S-rank dungeon. Calling him a brat, he says he compensates for his failures with weapons and tools. Yelling for him to shut up, the master advances to attack with everything. He then unleashes a sequence of blows, which are easily dodged by Guak. Not understanding, the master wonders why he can't land a single blow. Questioning if he doesn't realize, he says the weapon is useless without skill. He then prepares to attack again, with a look of pure rage. Offended by the words, he calls him a little bastard, quite irritated. Then he yells not to speak so carelessly and advances once more. Picking up a sword from the ground, he prepares for the opponent's blow. Using the sword, he blocks the legendary weapon's blow with surprising ease. He's then shocked that his weapon was stopped by such a simple one. Saying he needs a lesson, Guak prepares for a strike. Seeing the movement, the guildmaster's face fills with an expression of terror. With a precise blow, he hits the guildmaster's belly dead center. In a flashback, a man asks what he's talking about. Leaving. Apologizing, the other says he has his reasons for leaving the guild. Remembering the past, he recalls when he couldn't stop anyone from leaving. He remembers the hunter he recruited, hoping he'd become the best of all. But the hunter transferred out, touching his shoulder and saying he wanted to be the best. Realizing the truth, he understood that to be great, he needed a great stage. It was from that moment that he became ruthless to make his guild grow. Recruiting hunters with potential, he tried to get them to join him, those who refused the invitation to join his hunter guild. He then made them pay a very high and bitter price for refusing the offer. The guild's growth justified his actions, erasing any guilt from his mind. Waking up, the guild master comes face to face with an unknown man in front of him. Not recognizing him, he asks who he is and what he's doing there in that place. Introducing himself, the man says he's Park Seok-cheon, the master of the Blue Sky Guild. Shocked, he wonders why the Blue Sky Guild is there all of a sudden. With a smile, Guak asks if he finally woke up from the fainting spell he suffered. He then asks if Guak is a subordinate of the Blue Sky Guild too. Shouting, he lands a blow and asks whose subordinate he thinks he is. Warning not to talk nonsense anymore, Guak stares at him with a serious look. The master then says it seems he made him misunderstand the whole situation. He then clarifies that the hunter is not a member of the Blue Sky Guild. Confused, he wonders why the master of the Blue Sky Guild would be there. Explaining the situation, the man says he owed a favor and came to help. Shocked, he wonders what the true identity of the guy in the yellow hat is. Calling him by name, Guak begins to ask him a serious question. He then asks why the guys from the 11th Guild are in that place. With a look of despair, he says he just wanted to create the best guild. Guak then asks if deceiving people is what the best guild does. Shouting, he says he knows the method isn't the right way to grow. Sitting on the floor, he hears Guak ask if he became the guild he wanted. With a lost look, he seems unsure of what to do or say now. Desperate, he wonders what he should do in the face of this whole situation. He then shouts that weak guilds don't have any chance in the current system. With a determined look, he says he'll do everything to make the guild grow. Hearing the words, the guild members call him Master, emotional. Guak then asks if he would change his mind if the association changed. Saying it's impossible, he explains the influence of the big guilds on the association. Sitting down, he says the association, in power, will never change its dirty methods. He then says he's going to make the association change no matter what. Shocked, the master asks what he just said about the association. The other man then asks if he has any plan to do that. Looking at both of them, he seems to hesitate for an instant before answering. With a smile, he says he plans to form a force against the association. Outside, the girl wonders what they're talking about so much. Reflecting, she questions who Guak is to summon the guildmaster. Thoughtful, she observes a man approaching her with a smile on his face. She then asks if he's from the Blue Sky Guild, and he confirms. With her arms crossed, she comments that he seems quite capable and strong. At that moment, the two men leave the room and pass by her in the corridor. Shouting, everyone asks who Guak is and why he didn't say anything before. The guildmaster gets irritated with everyone on top of him and asks for space. Guak then asks what he should do with those people right now. Calling him by name, Park Seok stares at him before giving an answer. With a smile, he says people need an opportunity to show their worth. He then says maybe that guy hasn't had his big chance yet. Smiling, he says the guild leader must have learned something. The man then laughs, saying he's still the same after 10 years. Changing scenes, we see the outside of a building during the night. Inside a gym, a man trains lifting weights with great effort and dedication. With a face full of scars, he continues his heavy weightlifting training. Finishing the exercise, he throws the weight forcefully onto the gym floor. After another heavy training session, he breathes deeply, visibly quite tired. At that moment, a man approaches and warns about an unexpected guest from the association. Hearing the news, he seems a little surprised by that visit to his gym. A man in a suit then appears and greets him for the first time at the location. Introducing himself, he says he's Yoon Do-kyun, the leader of the violent crimes team. He then asks if he's speaking with the master of the famous Grizzly Guild. Then the master asks what business they have, since he hasn't committed any crimes. Changing the subject, the man asks if he knows the hunter Ko Young-hoon from the guild. With great anger, he grabs the iron bar with tremendous strength. In a quick movement, the weight flies in the direction of the man in the suit standing there. Threatening, he tells the man to be careful with the answer he's going to give. Unfazed, he reveals that the hunter was defeated by a mere rank B. Very shocked by the news, he asks what he just said. With a smile, he realizes he finally got the guildmaster's full attention. With a smile, the guildmaster seems very interested in the story. He then asks to hear more details about what happened in the fight. In a flashback, a man looks exhausted after a long and hard battle. He then remembers facing a giant two-headed monster in the dungeon. Moving forward, he runs toward the monster to strike with his sword. With a precise blow, he hits the monster's leg leg, but without much effect. Screaming in pain, the monster steps back a few paces but doesn't seem very hurt. Leaping high, he tries to strike the monster's head with his sword, but the blow has no effect, and the sword can't pierce the monster. Falling to the ground, he leans on his sword, visibly tired from the long fight. Guac then shouts at him to avoid the monster's hard parts when attacking. Nodding, he responds that he understood the tip for the battle. Sighing, Guac wonders how the situation suddenly got to that point. With a smile, the man asks to be accepted as his disciple right there. Not understanding, he asks what he means by this disciple talk. With a big smile, he asks to become his student and receive his blessing. Guac then asks why he would accept him if he already has a master. Awkwardly, he explains that his master is always too busy with the guild. Sighing, Guac realizes that his master pushed the task onto him. Agreeing, he says it's fine and that he'll help with his training. With a shout of joy, the man says he'll serve him as his master. At another moment, the man trains hard in a dungeon against powerful monsters. Watching the training, Guac compliments him, saying his skills have improved a lot. He then says that at this rate, he'll easily pass the next rank test. Shouting, he says he'll work even harder from that moment on. A group of hunters complains that Guac just watches from afar without fighting. They then question whether he just got lucky, doubting his abilities. Irritated, he shouts that his master is nothing like what they think. Telling him not to worry about it, Guac warns them to leave the dungeon. In silence, he just nods, still a bit irritated with everything. On the street, he thanks everyone for their hard work in the dungeon they cleared together. At that moment, someone approaches from behind and calls him, interrupting the farewell. Nervous, the boy asks if it's true that he was promoted in rank. He then asks why he's asking that question so suddenly. With a trembling voice, he asks to be accepted as his disciple too. Not understanding, Taejin asks what's happening there at that moment. He then asks if the guy still wants to be his disciple without even knowing him. Refusing, he dismisses the guy and tells him to go somewhere else. Then he asks if the guy gave up too easily after coming from so far. With a sad look, he says he understands if he doesn't want to accept him as a disciple. Apologizing, Guac seems exhausted just from talking to him about it. The other then suggests that he accept the guy as his disciple too. He argues that for someone shy, there must be a story behind the request. Besides, he says it would be better to have a companion to train with. Guac then says that the apprentice's attitude is very important in education. Shouting, he denies, and says he has plenty of motivation to be his disciple. With a serious look, the guy stares at the boy, who gets scared by the reaction. Pleading, he asks the master to accept the guy as his new disciple. The guy then asks why he's so eager to help the boy. He then approaches with a serious expression on his face to explain the reason. Shouting, he says they should give opportunities to those seeking a chance. With a determined look, he stares at the guy who seems a bit impatient. He then agrees and says the guy will join their next raid. Shouting with joy, he thanks him and promises he'll work very hard in training. Guac then asks what his name is since he doesn't know yet. Introducing himself, he says his name is Guac Pil-seong and that they'll get along well. The other then says he's Kim Tae-jun and that they can speak comfortably now. With a bow, he asks them to take good care of him from now on. Sighing, Guac thinks he'll teach him since he wants to learn so badly. A few days later, they enter an ice cave for a new mission. Watching Guac, he seems a bit worried about something at the location. Not understanding, Guac asks what's wrong, looking at him with curiosity. Standing still, he stares at a giant monster that shouts at him not to stand still. At the last second, Guac saves him from a blow from the furious monster. Thanking him, the young hunter seems quite scared by what almost happened. Shouting, he says that Zhonghwan isn't paying any attention to the battle. Apologizing, he lowers his head with a look of pure regret. Very irritated, he shouts, saying he already warned him to check the surroundings before. With his head down, he apologizes once more for his big mistake. Bringing his hand to his face, he wonders what he should do with the boy. In silence, Zhonghwan continues with his head down, not saying a word. Facing another monster, Zhonghwan looks pretty exhausted from the long and grueling battle. Using his skill, he charges forward to attack the monster with his enhanced weapon. With one strike, he hits the monster's arm, but doesn't do much damage. The monster then looks at him, seemingly unfazed by the blow it just received. Preparing a counterattack, the monster raises its arm for a powerful downward strike. At that moment, the other two appear and rush in to attack the monster together. Thanking them for the help, he bows, looking a bit embarrassed by the situation. Shouting, Guac tells him he needs to aim for the monster's weak points. Irritated, he yells that the young man is driving him completely insane with his mistakes. Turning his back, he walks away, looking very frustrated with Guac's training. In silence, he just watches his master walk away, with a really sad look on his face. The other one then tells him not to get discouraged and that he'll do better next time. Saying he's going to cool off, he walks away alone through the dungeon grounds. Worried, The man watches him leave, calling out to him, but gets no response. In silence, he watches Zheng Huan with an expression of concern and exhaustion. With his fist clenched, he seems very frustrated with the situation he's in. Alone, he laments everything that's been happening to him lately. He then wonders how much longer he'll have to put up with being treated like this. With an angry look, he thinks about giving up on everything all at once. But he quickly changes his mind and says he needs to hang on just a little longer. With determination, he says he can't give up now, no matter what. Suddenly, he hears someone calling out, saying they're already leaving. Running, he shouts that he's coming, hurrying to join the others. Elsewhere, a large office building stands out in the city landscape. Sighing, Guak wonders what all that hard and exhausting work is even for. In the room, Park Seok appears to be sleeping, completely bored with everything. He then asks why Guak keeps going there if he's so tired. Complaining, he says it's all his fault for accepting Taijin as a disciple. Park Seok then asks why he doesn't just join the guild already. Explaining, he says he doesn't want to join so he can act more freely. Park Seok then says it's unsettling that the association is so quiet. Besides, he mentions there are rumors about Guak because of the visits. With a smile, he says there's nothing to worry about with that. With a confused look, he seems not to understand what Park Seok is talking about. Park Seok then reveals there's a rumor that they're secret lovers. Shouting, he asks who the bastards spreading these ridiculous rumors are. He then explains that the guild members are unhappy with the situation. Park Seok then asks him to either join the guild or stop visiting them. Sighing, he says it seems old folks aren't welcome anywhere. Saying he understood, he gets up to leave, leaving Park Seok surprised. Warning that he won't be back, he says goodbye and leaves Park Seok's room. Before leaving, Park Seok calls him back to give one last warning. He then tells him there's a rumor that the Grizzly Guild is investigating him. He then asks if they're like those bastards from Northern Lights before. Explaining about the guild, he talks about the terrible reputation of its hunter master. Asking him not to worry, he tells Park Seok he doesn't need to forget about him. After saying goodbye, he turns and leaves Park Seok's room. Sighing, Park Seok from the guild looks visibly worried about Guak's stubbornness. At another moment, the scene shifts to a busy area of the city. Gathered with his disciples, he asks if everyone is already present there at the location. Confirming yes, they respond to the master's call, awaiting the next orders. Asking the reason, he questions if some dangerous dungeon suddenly appeared. Meanwhile, the other young man stays silent, just watching the conversation between them. Answering the question, he says it's actually not about training today. He then reveals he thought of an activity for the team to build bonds. Confirming yes, he explains it's nothing special, just for camaraderie. With a smile, he says he wants to take the opportunity to create some bonds. Saying that breaks help, the two young men agree, a bit awkward with the idea. Bringing his hand to his head, he asks what exactly they're going to do together. Thinking a bit, he seems to be deciding what to do next with them. He then asks what young people usually do when they take time off. One of them answers that he usually plays Go or goes hiking for fun. With a smile, he says he didn't know young people still played Go. The other then comments that he finds the game boring, but it's an unusual hobby. Shouting, he asks what's wrong with Go, leaving him startled. After the outburst, he asks what the other boy usually does for fun. With a bit of embarrassment, he seems to hesitate before answering the master's question. Changing scenes, they go to a reading cafe with various books and comics. Guak then comments that this is how young people have fun these days. Sitting down, each of them enjoys reading a book or comic in silence. Reading a book, he seems to be enjoying the quiet pastime with his disciples. While reading, he stays silent for a moment, just watching the young man. He then asks why the young man decided to become a professional hunter. With a smile, he responds that he's loved comics since he was a child. He explains he got excited when hunters appeared, looking like comic book heroes. That's why he decided to become a hunter, wanting to live a cool life like a hero. At that, the young man asks if it isn't kind of a childish dream, looking embarrassed. But his master responds that, no, it isn't, leaving the young hunter a bit surprised. Saying it's a great dream, he asks, what's the problem with a man dreaming? With an emotional face, the young man thanks him, calling him master again. Suddenly, Ji Hyun appears at the location, catching his attention while he was reading. Looking at him, she calls him by name, seeming quite surprised to find him there. Reading a book, she sits in silence and seems deeply focused on what she's seeing. She then wonders what exactly she's doing right now, letting out a long sigh. Questioning why she's thinking about him, she says he's not even that good looking. Thinking about how she fell for him, she remembers he was nice during the raid. Feeling that he's different from other guys, she continues her reflection about him. Because of nostalgia, she ends up remembering her grandfather from her childhood. Wondering what Pil Seong is doing, she tells her colleague she's going to the bathroom. In that moment, she admits to herself that she actually misses him. Suddenly, she's surprised to see that Guak Pil Seong is right there nearby. Sitting there, he looks up in her direction, and just listens to what was said. When he sees her, he greets her saying it's quite a coincidence to run into her there. Surprised, she asks him what exactly he's doing at that place. Smiling, he responds that he's there to meet up and have fun with friends. Not believing her luck, she wonders how she managed to find him right there. Seeing the interaction, one of his friends asks the master what his relationship with her is. Asking if the two are dating, the friend leaves her with a surprised expression. Reacting nervously, she asks what kind of nonsense that is that he just said. Agreeing with the idea, he says it's ridiculous and that she's just an acquaintance. In a shy way, he introduces himself as Lee Jung-hwan, saying it's a pleasure. Not knowing what to say, she just nods her head while he scratches the back of his neck. Seeing the delay, her friend asks why Ji-hun still isn't going. Recognizing her friend, he greets her and says it's been quite a while. Calling her to go, the friend asks if they shouldn't be leaving now. Waving to the two of them, he says they should go and that they'll see each other later. Turning her face away, she stays silent for a moment before leaving. Before she leaves, he calls her one last time to talk to her. Then he invites the two of them to go to karaoke, saying it'll be more fun. Holding the book, he explains that for now they're in the middle of reading. Really excited, his friend shouts that they should definitely go to karaoke. Turning to the other, he asks Tae-jun if he's okay with it too. Changing scenes, they appear in a karaoke room to have fun. Arriving there, one of the guys comments that it's been a long time since he sang. In this moment, she questions why she suggested they go to karaoke, but determined, she says she's going to take the chance to get closer to him. With the microphone in hand, she calls Pil-seong to sing a song with her. Saying it's the first time he's heard the song, he declines her invitation. Singing along with the other guy, she thinks this wasn't supposed to be like this. Then she insists that Pil-seong sing a song alone for all of them. Shortly after, the intro to the song he chose starts playing on the screen. Grabbing the microphone, he starts singing the song with quite a lot of enthusiasm. Shocked by the song, she wonders why he doesn't sing something normal. Seeing the reaction, her friend approaches to say something in her ear. Her friend then asks if by any chance she'd be interested in Pil-seong. Asking if it's that obvious, the friend confirms that yes, it's quite obvious. Apologizing, she says she'll give up since he doesn't seem interested in her. Holding her hand, her friend shows she'll give all the support she needs. Asking her to trust her, her friend says she'll find a way to get the two together. At the end of the song, the screen shows he got the maximum score of 100. Praising the master, the friend says his singing skills are incredible. Calling Pil-seong, her friend approaches to talk to him about something. Saying that Ji-hyun forgot her wallet, she asks him to go look for it with her. Offering to go instead, the other friend stands up and says he can go. In that moment, she stops him by pushing him back into his seat with a strike. Insisting on the idea, she asks if he can do this big favor for her. After hearing the request, he stays silent for a moment, thinking about what to do. Agreeing to go, he says the two of them can go together to look for the wallet. Seeing the result, her friend smiles and makes a thumbs up sign with her hand. As they leave, the other guy stays behind with a very serious expression. Already back, he says he's glad they found it and asks if they can return. Asking if they're going already, he wants to know if she needs anything else. Not knowing what to do, she wonders how to act on this opportunity that was created. Taking advantage of the moment, she asks if he happens to already like someone. Responding that he liked someone in the past, he leaves her a bit more curious about it. In a direct way, he says that person he liked has already died. Apologizing profusely, she says she shouldn't have asked that question. With an expression of regret, she seems to blame herself for the question she asked. While he remembers his grandmother, she questions if he lost someone. Breaking the silence, he asks why she asked that question out of nowhere. Not understanding, she asks what he's talking about at that moment. He then explains that Jung-hwan seemed quite interested in her before. Shouting really loud, she states that she already has someone she likes. Saying he didn't know, he asks if by any chance it would be someone he knows. Left speechless, she can't give an answer to the question he asked. Warning she's going to the bathroom, she runs away from there without saying anything else. Watching her go, he says young people these days are hard to understand. Back at the karaoke, the room stays silent with just the two of them waiting. Finding the delay strange, the guy comments that everyone is taking too long to come back. Worried about Jung-hwan, he wonders if something might have happened to his friend. Alone, her friend keeps thinking if things are going well for Ji-hyun. Changing scenes, she finds Jung-hwan and asks what's happening with him. With his head down, he remains silent and can't look directly at her. Seeing his reaction, she wonders if what Pil-seong said was true. Calling out to Ji-hyun, he seems very overwhelmed and doesn't know what to do. Suddenly, a figure appears behind her, and she's paralyzed, unable to move. Turning around scared, she tries to see who the person that appeared there is. After hearing a scream, he just stands there observing the situation seriously. Thinking that Ji-hyun is way too late, he wonders why she hasn't arrived. At that moment, his phone rings and leaves him with a very surprised expression. Answering the call, he simply says hello to the person on the other end. On the other side, a voice asks if he happens to be looking for a woman. With a serious face, he asks who the person speaking to him is. Laughing at the question, the man questions back if he wants wants to know who he is. Saying he's the one protecting his friend, he makes it clear the situation is unpleasant. Asking him not to worry, the man says she'll be fine if he obeys. Agreeing to do what he says, he hears that he must go to the location alone. After hanging up, he stands still looking at his phone for a moment. With a determined look, he turns and seems ready for whatever comes. Switching scenes, a warehouse is shown in a very remote and dark place. Inside, several people are gathered and seem to be waiting for someone. Sitting down, the boss comments that he's late and should have arrived by now. Then one of the henchmen asks the boss if he thinks the target will actually come. Turning to the henchman, the boss questions him, and the man apologizes, very frightened. With a quick strike, he grabs the man's face with great force in front of everyone. Holding the henchman by the neck, he lifts him off the ground with no apparent difficulty. Then he throws the man away, who ends up falling hard on the warehouse floor. Complaining to the fallen man, he says he already told them to call him master, not boss. Warning everyone, he says whoever makes the mistake again will have the same fate. Then he gives the order for his henchmen to take the man away immediately. Sitting in the chair again, he continues waiting with a not-so-good face. At that, one of the men asks the master what Ko Young-hoon said on the call. Dismissing the question, he simply refers to the other as a big coward. Switching scenes, a man tries to prevent someone from entering his office. Arriving at the location, the guildmaster opens the door with a very strong blow. Smiling, he greets Ko Young-hoon, saying it's been a while since they've seen each other. Irritated by the visit, he asks Seo Gwang-ho why he's there. Entering the room, he says he recently heard a very interesting story about him. Asking if he was humiliated by a rank B hunter, he surprises him. With an irritated look, he says the other has too much free time to mock. He then explains that he was just curious about the hunter who managed to crush him. Giving advice, he warns that if he gets involved, he'll definitely regret it. Repeating the word friend, he seems not to agree with what he just heard. Next, he starts laughing really loud at the warning he received from the other. Challenging what he heard, he says to wait and see if he'll regret it. With nothing to respond, the man just remains silent, with a serious look. Back at the warehouse, one of the henchmen calls the master's attention to something. Smiling, he warns that their guest has finally arrived while they were talking. At that instant, the man they were waiting for appears at the warehouse entrance walking. With open arms, he welcomes him and says he almost aged waiting for him. Going straight to the point, he asks where exactly Ji-hyun is at that moment. Calling him impatient, the master guarantees that the woman is perfectly safe. Right after, the girl is shown tied to a chair, leaving him in shock. Shouting, he asks what exactly they did to Ji-hyun in that place. Explaining the situation, the master says she just lost consciousness for a while. Wanting to know who they are, he also asks why they did that to her. Remembering he didn't introduce himself, the master adjusts himself in the chair to speak. Introducing himself, he reveals himself as Seo Gwang-ho, the master of the Grizzly Guild. Upon hearing the guild's name, he seems to remember something important. Commenting that the rumors are real, he says the master is a lunatic. Noticing he came alone, the master calls him a legendary hunter. Realizing the situation, he states that the master then knows who he is. Confirming he knows, he says he wouldn't lure a rank B for nothing. Before the revelation, the image of an older man appears for an instant. Impressed, he says an 80-year-old man became a brat. Remembering the past, he says the hunter could be the head of the association. Explaining the reason, he says the association considers his existence a nuisance. Revealing everything, he tells that he received orders to eliminate a simple rank B hunter. Finding it all very suspicious, he says he investigated and discovered his true identity. Then he asks if all that was set up just to get rid of him. Extending his hand toward him, the master seems to make some kind of proposal. At that, the master proposes that the two should unite their forces against everyone. Surprised by the proposal, he just asks what he meant by that. Telling his side, he says he doesn't get along with the association because they meddle. Smiling, he asks what he thinks about uniting against their common enemy. Responding to the proposal, he says there are some things he really hates. Revealing one of them, he says he hates when people close to him get hurt because of him. Apologizing for the kidnapping, he says he wanted the association to see them as enemies. Realizing the setup, he says the master knew he would refuse the offer. Calling him smart, the master says he's very good for an old man. He says the master is despicable, but the other denies it, wanting an alliance. Changing the subject, he says he prepared a small gift for his guest. Recognizing the young man, he calls him by name, not understanding what's happening. Smiling, the master reveals the young man as a subordinate and asks about the gift. The two stare at each other fixedly, with the young man seeming very nervous about everything. Threatening the girl, the master warns, it's better he does what was told, making it very clear. He warns the master that he won't be able to forgive him for this. Adjusting his gloves, he says he'll need to teach them a serious lesson. With a fixed look, he tells everyone to prepare for what's going to happen. Alone in the warehouse, he faces Guangho and all his henchmen present there. Laughing at the situation, Guangho asks if he thinks he can lecture him. Gesturing with his arms, he says he understands the other was once a legend, but he taunts, saying that now the hunter is just another nobody in the dungeons. Continuing the provocation, he says, in other words, the situation is pretty simple. Getting straight to the point, Guangho states that his time has passed and he's finished. With a sideways smile, he warns the hunter to prepare for the worst. Then he guarantees the other will regret refusing his offer. Giving the final order, Guangho shouts for all his henchmen to get him. Immediately, all the henchmen advance together to attack the hunter at once. With a very serious face, he prepares to face all the enemies coming at him. He then blocks the first strike, which comes at him with full force. Right then, another henchman tries to hit him with a blow coming from his side. Dodging the attack, he moves quickly to escape the enemy's strike. Appearing behind the henchman, he prepares to begin his counterattack. With a fast and precise strike, he hits the henchman square in the face. Stepping on the fallen enemy, he pins him to the ground without any difficulty. Looking around, he asks if the fight is already over or if there's more. Seeing the scene, Guangho and his henchmen just stand there watching very carefully. Then he grabs his sword as he prepares to continue. Taking a step, he warns that now it's his turn to attack. Advancing against the enemies, he ignores them all, having only one in his sights. Then Guangho from the guild already knows he's the target. Blocking the attack, he manages to defend himself from the powerful blow. With a smile, Guangho admits he ended up underestimating his opponent quite a bit. Recognizing his strength, he says his reputation wasn't just talk. Next, the two blades clash again with great force, but he says a washed-up fighter is still washed up, no matter what. Shouting for him to fall, Guangho attacks with a strike coming from above. Complaining, he says Guangho definitely talks too much during the fight. Using a strike, he manages to throw Guangho far away with the impact. Surprised, the henchmen say they can't even say anything about the fight. Exchanging more blows, the two blades clash with great force again. Saying he's good, Guangho asks, "What's the trick to staying young?" With another strike, he says, "Using your abilities for evil is unforgivable." Warning that the fight starts now, Guangho tells the old man not to be arrogant. Then he prepares to use a much more powerful strike against the hunter. Seeing the preparation, the henchmen get pretty excited about what's going to happen. Calling the strike reckless, he prepares to receive Guangho's attack. Leaping in his direction, he defends himself from the blow using his sword. Shocked, they can't believe the hunter managed to block that strike. Then he takes advantage of the moment to jump really high over his opponent. Descending with speed, he lands a blow that cuts Guangho's face. Feeling the strike, Guangho just lets out a scream of pain from the wound. With his hand on the cut, he stares at the hunter who remains ready to fight. Walking in his direction, the hunter says he doesn't know how to use his own power. Continuing the lesson, he warns not to depend only on the power of his abilities. Remembering a conversation, he had already said to aim for the weak points. Wiping the wound, Guangho complains that he's giving an arrogant sermon. Shouting at the henchmen, he orders them to hurry up and come heal him now. Using their abilities, the two healers begin to use their powers on Guangho. Being healed, he admits his pride was hurt fighting with an old man. Looking at his opponent, he recognizes he's not just any washed-up old man. With his back turned, he asks the hunter if they should start round 2. Concentrating his energy, he prepares to use an even stronger power. With his power released, he seems ready to attack with everything. With a serious look, he prepares to deliver his next strike. Launching his attack, he sends a massive blow in his opponent's direction. Laughing, he challenges the hunter to try blocking that strike he launched. With his sword in hand, he calmly prepares for the next attack. Seeing the scene, Guangho is completely shocked by what just happened. He advances with a strike that throws Guangho far away with the force. After the blow, the two opponents separate and face each other in the warehouse. Still recovering, Guangho asks what kind of ability he used now. He then explains it was just a weapon enhancement, nothing special. Not believing it, Guangho questions how such a simple power can generate that result. Explaining his point, he says what matters is how the ability is used. With contempt, he tells the other not to make him laugh with that explanation. At that moment, he realizes his weapon is cracked and questions the hunter about it. Suddenly, he understands the target was his weapon from the beginning. Right after, Guangho's weapon breaks and falls to the ground. With great anger, he's left speechless seeing his weapon destroyed. With no other option, he shouts for Zheng Huan, who appears holding the hostage. He then orders the woman to be killed if the old man moves an inch. In silence, the young man just watches the scene with a very serious expression. Smiling, Gwang Ho asks what the hunter will do in that situation now. Making the threat clear, he warns that if the hunter takes one step, it's over. Then the two stand staring at each other, creating an atmosphere of great tension in the warehouse. Standing in the middle of the warehouse, he stares down Gwang Ho and his group with the hostage. Asking what he's going to do, Gwang Ho orders him to drop his weapon to save her. Staring at the guy, he stays silent for a moment, thinking about his decision. Without hesitation, he then decides to release his sword, which falls to the ground. After dropping the weapon, he asks Gwang Ho if he's satisfied now. With a smile, Gwang Ho says that's how he should be, nice and obedient. Walking toward him, he warns that he won't kill him, but there's a condition. Lunging with a strike, he says Gwak won't leave with his body intact. With a ready gaze, he prepares to react to Gwang Ho's blow. Dodging the attack, he lands a solid hit right on his opponent's face. Feeling the blow, Gwang Ho screams in pain from the attack he didn't expect. Spinning his body, he lands another hit right in the guild Gwang Ho's stomach. Being thrown back, Gwang Ho flies and slams hard into the ground. Fallen on the ground, he coughs heavily while recovering from the blow that hit him. With anger, he asks if Gwak doesn't care what's going to happen. Saying it's shameful, Gwak criticizes Gwang Ho for using hostages in a fight. With the order, he tells Jung Hwan to cut off one of the woman's arms right now. With the weapon in hand, the guy stays silent and seems to be trembling a lot. Hesitating to obey, he seems unwilling to follow through with Gwang Ho's order. Pressing even harder, Gwang Ho grinds his teeth in anger at the guy's delay. Screaming, he asks what the hell his henchman is still waiting for. Holding the weapon, he seems to be feeling a lot of pain and can't move. Seeing the attitude, Gwak calls the guy's name with a serious expression. Asking him to think, Gwak talks about the reason for becoming a Gwak. He then asks if that's the kind of person he wants to be. Remembering his dream, the guy reveals he always wanted to be like the protagonists. Out of patience, Gwang Ho yells for him to hurry up and cut off her arm. Closing his eyes, he seems to make a final decision about what he should do. In great pain, he seems to have hurt himself by turning against Gwang Ho. Apologizing to the girl, he drops the weapon and falls to his knees on the ground. With hatred, Gwang Ho calls his henchman a traitorous bastard for his attitude. Advancing against the guy, Gwang Ho yells for him to get out of his way. Leaping toward him, Gwak appears in the air and surprises Gwang Ho. With one strike, he hits Gwang Ho. Gwang Ho screams in pain as he feels his face getting crushed by Gwak. Seeing their Gwang Ho on the ground, the henchmen are left without reaction to the scene. Complaining in pain, Gwang Ho tries to get up but is stopped by Gwak. Screaming that he won, Gwang Ho admits defeat and begs him to stop. Hearing the request, Gwak says he never intended to kill him. Without listening, he says there's no point in just telling him not to do bad things anymore. He then says that if words don't work, he'll learn through his body. In fear, Gwang Ho screams that he was wrong and asks if it needs to go this far. In the end, Gwak reaffirms that he wasn't trying to kill him, but to teach him. Promising not to cross his path, Gwang Ho begs him to spare him. Ignoring the plea, Gwak attacks Gwang Ho with a blow from his sword. After the blow, Gwang Ho falls to the ground, appearing quite injured. With Gwang Ho defeated, Gwak lets out a sigh of relief and sheathes his sword. Looking at the henchman, he asks if anyone else wants to fight him. Without responding, the henchmen just back away in fear of what might happen. Calling them pathetic fools, he lets out air with a look of contempt. Giving a final order, he tells the henchmen to get rid of Gwang Ho and leave. Watching everything, the guy stays silent with an expression of fear. Then Gwak turns around and comes face to face with the guy in the warehouse. Apologizing, the guy says he's sorry for deceiving him all this time. Staring at the guy, Gwak stays silent for a moment before acting. With a quick strike, he hits the guy in the face, leaving him surprised. After the blow, he closes his eyes and gives a slight side smile. With his hand on his shoulder, he says the guy should call him Gwang Ho. Not believing it, he asks if Gwang Ho is really forgiving him after everything. He then says everyone makes mistakes and there's no need for a scolding. Continuing the subject, he seems to want to say something else important. Remembering the dream, he asks if the guy wants to be like a protagonist. With a smile, he starts talking about the comics he's read. He explains that protagonists get stronger after overcoming difficulties. Saying he believes in him, he affirms that the guy will do the same. Speechless, the guy just calls out to his Gwang Ho, seeming very emotional. Calling the guy, he says that now they need to get Ji-hyun and leave. After everything, he stays silent for a moment, just watching. Changing scenes, Ko Young-hoon asks why he wanted to meet him so suddenly. He then responds that obviously it's because he has something to discuss with him. Complaining, Ko Young-hoon says that's fine, but questions the meeting location. He then reveals he's curious about why they're meeting there. Taking a step, he begins to approach the Grizzly Guild building. Not understanding, the man's face shows a surprised expression. Suddenly, the guild members appear and greet him with great respect. Seeing the scene, the man man walks toward him, not understanding what's going on. He then wonders why Guang Ho's subordinates are bowing. Calling out to him, the man catches up and asks what's happening. With a confused expression, he asks if Guak decided to join the guild. Irritated, he asks why he would join a guild like that. Telling him to shut up, Guak says to just follow him without complaining. With a bad feeling, he thinks he already knows what's going to happen. Shouting, he kicks the door open and tells the idiot that he's there. Behind the desk, the former guild master gets startled and hides underneath it. With trembling hands, he keeps grumbling and hiding in fear. Telling him to come out, Guak shouts for the idiot to show himself and get out of there. With his mouth open, the man just watches the scene, calling out Guang Ho's name. Apologizing, the former guildmaster swears he'll never do anything bad again. Shocked by the scene, the man can't understand what's happening there. Calling him pathetic, Guak says he's a rank S hunter. After the confusion, he asks what happened between him and Guang Ho. He then explains that he disciplined him, and because of that, he won't be the Guang Ho anymore. Hearing the explanation, the man understands that Guang Ho was warned to stop. Remembering the conversation, Guak asks if he wouldn't do everything for the guild. With a smile, he says he has a very interesting proposal for him. He then proposes that the man take full control of the Grizzly Guild. Saying that Grizzly is one of the top 10, he sees an opportunity. But the man says it doesn't make sense for them to take over a bigger guild. He responds that the man worries too much for someone who used to forcefully recruit. Turning to Guang Ho, he asks if he also thinks this is a problem. Shouting, Guang Ho says he's handing over the guild and even quitting as a hunter. He then questions who will fill the rank S hunter position in the guild. Watching the scene, he thinks Guang Ho's situation is pretty pathetic. With Guang Ho agreeing, he asks what the other man is going to do now. Questioning the proposal, he asks why Guak is doing this for him. Revealing his plan, he says he's forming a force against the association. With a smile, he says he wants the guild merger as a starting point. Surprised, he repeats Guak's words about the best guild. Confirming the proposal, he says it's the best guild he's always wanted. Outraged, he asks if Guak wants him to become his lackey. With a smile, he says that's not it, and that he'll need his help. Despite being sudden, he thinks the offer isn't all that bad. After thinking, he finally agrees with Guak's proposal. Agreeing to the merger, he says he's counting on the other to help. Suddenly, a man comes running in, saying they have a big problem. With a panicked expression, he says the person from the association is back. Surprised, Guak questions what the association is doing there again. Opening the door, a man enters the room and greets those inside. Introducing himself, he reveals himself as the leader of the violent crimes team. With a nervous tone, Guang Ho just confirms what the man said. Sitting at the desk, he asks what brings him there so suddenly. With a serious face, he remains silent, waiting for the visitor's response. Guak then tells him to go find out the reason for the visit while they wait. Warning not to raise suspicions, Guak says he'll be keeping an eye on him. With a serious tone, the man asks if he has anything else to say. He explains that he's just curious to see how things are going around there. Asking if that's all, Guang Ho questions if he thinks he can't handle it. He then wonders why the association is so interested in Guak. Calling out his name, the man from the association stares at him with a smile. With a gesture, he says he has no obligation to share those details. Threatening the guild, he tells Guang Ho to focus only on completing the mission. Angrily, Guang Ho asks if he's threatening him, but the man denies it. Waving, he says he believes Guang Ho understood and that he's leaving now. Turning around, he warns that he'll be waiting for good news very soon. Angrily, Guang Ho calls him an annoying bastard because of the threat. From the door, Guak asks if the man from the association has finally left. Praising the performance, he says Guang Ho did surprisingly very well. With a threatening tone, he asks if Guang Ho isn't planning anything secretly. In panic, he denies it and says he would never dare to do something like that against him. He then comments that the association's methods are really very dirty. With a serious look, he says the association has become a corrupt organization. Hearing everything, the man remains silent, just absorbing the information. He then wonders who Guak is and why the association wants him. Turning his back, he prepares to leave and make his final decision. With a smile, he warns that he won't just sit back and accept all this. Preparing to act, he wonders if he should strike back this time. The scene shifts to a coffee shop on a sunny day in the city. Inside, Guak and Zheng Huan are sitting at a table, talking. With a serious tone, he says he heard that Zheng Huan quit being a hunter. Explaining his decision, he says that being a hunter wasn't for him. Wanting to know more, he asks what Zheng Huan is planning to do now. With a downcast look, he begins to explain what his next plan is. Elsewhere, a large commercial building with antennas on top is shown. With his hands and legs shaking, he seems quite nervous about the situation. Sitting down, he clenches his hands and stays silent, waiting for what's going to happen. Asking him not to be nervous, a man assures him that his anonymity will be maintained. He then tells Zheng Huan not to act nervous and just to speak. With a smile, he says that Zheng Huan just needs to answer their questions. Warning that they're about to start, he makes Zheng Huan even more nervous and apprehensive. On TV, a host greets the viewers and announces the latest news. Starting the program, he reveals shocking information about guild crimes. With a gesture, he announces that they've invited the informant to the broadcast. Wearing a mask, Zheng Huan greets everyone and prepares to speak. The host then asks if he was part of a well-known guild. With a smile, he asks Zheng Huan to tell what crimes the guild committed. He reveals that the guild master used violence against innocent civilians. Continuing the accusation, he says that the master joined forces with the Hunters Association. In the control room, they hear a noise and wonder what it is. Standing up, one of them says he's going outside to check what's happening. Walking through the room, he approaches the door to see what caused the noise. Suddenly, Guangho appears, leaving the man completely shocked. With hatred, he calls everyone rats and questions the secret filming. Asking who he is, the man tries to calm down the situation that's formed. He then asks Guangho not to cause a scene during the live broadcast. Angrily, he asks if the man knows who he is to do that. Threatening everyone, he orders them to bring out the rat that's hiding there. Asking who he's talking about, Guangho says it's the guy who ratted him out. Not understanding, the man just stares with a puzzled look. Pointing at the door, he pushes the man and asks if the traitor is in there. Shouting Zheng Huan's name, he enters the studio with great anger. He then realizes there's no one there and that the studio is empty. Walking around the place, he wonders where everyone is hiding now. Shouting, he orders the traitor to show himself and says he's going to finish him. Suddenly, a voice tells him to stop, and Guangho turns around surprised. At the door, a man greets him, saying it's a surprise to see him there. With a flash at the entrance, the man and his team appear in the studio. Surrounded, Guangho stands still in the middle of the studio, looking at the men. Angrily, he asks what's going on and if they want to fight. The man then says they received a report of a hunter causing problems. He explains that one of his subordinates betrayed him and came to deal with him. The man then questions if he thought he could cause a scene like that. He reveals that the traitor also knows about the agreements between the two of them. Angrily, he says that Guangho is handling everything in a messy way. Telling him to shut up, Guangho says that he's the one always giving dirty jobs. Sighing, he says there's nothing he can do in that situation. With a serious look, he says they're going to change priorities and find Zheng Huan. One of the agents asks what they should do when they find the traitor. He then says there's no point in leaving any problems for the future. With a direct order, he commands that Zheng Huan be killed as soon as they see him. Suddenly, a noise catches his and his agent's attention in the studio. Shouting, he warns everyone that the traitor is escaping and orders them to pursue him, yelling for them to get out of the way. Guangho says he's going to catch the traitor. He then orders his agents to go after the fugitive as well, so they don't lose him. Angry at the situation, he just complains and watches the chase begin. Hidden in a hallway, Zheng Huan seems to be waiting for the dust to settle. Relieved, he wonders if they lost him and where his master is. With a worried look, he stays silent, just thinking about the situation. The master then asks what he's planning to do next in his life. He responds that he's looking for another job, but that it's not being easy at all. Lamenting, he says he feels like he only showed his failures to the master. He then wonders why the master came to see him on that specific day. The master reveals that he came because he needs his help with something important. He says he did everything that was asked and that the master should arrive. Suddenly, a man appears and attacks him, saying he can't continue anymore. With the surprise attack, he's shocked and unable to react in time. But before being hit, his master appears and blocks the enemy's strike. Relieved, he calls out to the master, who saved him from the unexpected attack. With a smile, Guak says he did a good job up to that point. He then says that now that he's arrived, Zheng Huan can finally relax and rest. The scene shifts, showing the empty TV studio with its cameras. Shouting, Guangho calls out for Zheng Huan and asks where he's hiding. Finding it strange, he says he's sure the guy went that way. Out of patience, he says he doesn't know what their game is, but he doesn't have time for this. With a smile, Guangho says people make mistakes and he's being mean. Calling it a waste of time, he orders everyone to head outside. Suddenly, a stone wall rises up and blocks everyone's exit. Turning around, he says he can't let them leave and asks what they're going to do. With a finger on his chin, he says Guangho will have to buy some time. Frightened by the idea, the hunter shoves Guangho forward to fight in his place. Lamenting, he wonders how he ended up in this situation and that he should have listened. He then warns that at this rate, Guangho is going to become an enemy of the association. He responds that there's someone he'd rather not have as an enemy. With the decision made, he says he was already planning to eliminate the master anyway. Angrily, Guangho complains that everyone these days treats him like a joke. With a look of hatred, he says he never liked the other guy from the start. Adjusting his glasses, he responds that the feeling is mutual, and what a coincidence. Surrounded by the agents, Guangho prepares to fight all of them alone. Shouting, he orders his agents to attack Guak with everything they've got. With a mocking tone, he asks if Guangho thinks he can stop him. With one strike, he takes down one of the agents to the ground with ease. With a smile, he asks if Guangho is still sure about what he said. Suddenly, chains appear and bind Guangho, who's caught by surprise. He then wonders what this is and why he can't break free. The man then asks if he wants to know why he became the team leader. He reveals it's because he can use an ability that not even S-rank can escape. Explaining the weakness, he says S-rank hunters are way too confident. With a signal, he orders his agents to prepare to attack the bound Guangho. While restrained, he screams in pain from the power of the chains on his body. Fallen to his knees, he remains trapped by the chains, unable to break free. With a smile, he says even a lion can die to a hyena. Grabbing a weapon, he prepares to deliver the final blow to the fallen Guangho. With a serious look, he says it's time to end it all right here. Suddenly, the hunter appears and says that's not happening. No way. With a sword strike, he manages to defend the attack and protect Guangho. After the block, he leaps backward and distances himself, ready for battle. Angrily, he asks what hunter Guak Pil Seong is doing there. He then responds by asking if there's any reason he shouldn't be there. With a look of rage, he realizes the hunter is the reason for the betrayal. The hunter then asks who gave the order to get rid of him. With a mocking tone, he asks if he really needs to answer that. One of the agents asks the leader what they should do in this situation. With Guangho incapacitated, he says they now have a chance to win. Pointing at the hunter, he orders his agents to take care of him too. One of the agents then prepares to attack, spinning his chain weapon. With a strike, the agent launches his weapon toward the hunter with force. Without difficulty, he grabs the weapon's chain and stops the attack mid-air. Mouth hanging open, the agent is shocked to see his attack stopped. Pulling the chain, he brings the agent close and prepares to attack. With a quick strike, he hits the agent's face with tremendous force. Shouting, the leader orders his agents not to underestimate him and treat him like S-rank. With that, all the remaining agents jump to attack the hunter at the same time. With a look of contempt, he simply calls them idiots for attacking. With a single sword strike, he defeats all the agents in one go. After the fight, he stands over the bodies of the fallen agents. At the Hunters Association, a meeting discusses the matter of Guak Pil Seong. They reveal that a video has leaked and they're trying to deal with the situation. The plan is to wrap everything up as personal misconduct by the team leader. Sighing, an S-rank huntress complains about the problem the team leader caused. She then questions whether the young man in the video is really the hunter Guak Pil Seong. With a smile, she says that according to the investigation, the information is correct. Finding it interesting, one of the members says his ability is enviable. With a smile, she thinks that the old folks are now coveting youth. With a look of contempt, she calls them an ugly and pathetic bunch. A man then reveals that the guildmaster has allied himself with Guak Pil Seong. Angrily, they say the troublemaker isn't helping, and they should have acted. One of them asks why Guak is operating with his identity hidden. The man responds that it hasn't been determined yet, and he'll find out soon. A member wonders why he's causing confusion after so much time. With a smile, she just listens to the conversation and seems to be thinking about something. With a smile, she wonders if he's after the president's position. One of the members suggests they need to deal with Guak quickly. With a serious expression, the president of the Hunters Association falls silent. He then says everyone should be cautious about public attention. He decides they'll think about how to deal with him later. With a smile, she says everyone should follow the president's lead. She then reveals that the two were close colleagues in the past. With a serious tone, he seems to dislike the revelation that was made. He then falls silent, just watching the meeting with a distant look. With a mysterious smile, she continues observing the president's reaction. With a serious face, he seems to be thinking about something very important. Elsewhere, the Changchon Guild building is shown on a clear day. A man reports that the association plans to blame the team leader. Angrily, Guak calls them shameless because of the decision. The man then suggests they should reveal the truth about the incident. Calling it absurd, he says nothing would change by revealing his identity. He explains that the association has the power to control the media easily. He says he expected this reaction, but other opportunities will arise. Ashamed, the man says he had no idea what was happening behind his back. Thanking him, Guak says he knows the man always takes care of him. With an emotional look, the man calls out to Guak, seeming very grateful. Suddenly, two men enter the room and apologize for the interruption. They then ask why they were called to be there at that moment. He responds that he called them because he has something to say and asks if there's a problem. Afraid, they deny it and say they have no complaints to make. He then thinks he expected he wasn't an ordinary person. Thinking, he finally believes that man is the legendary Guak Pil Seong. He understands why the other man treated him with so much respect. Resuming the conversation, Guak says he plans to create a new force. Not understanding, the man asks what kind of force he's talking about. He reveals he wants a place that can keep the association under control. With a smile, he says it'll be like a leash for the bastards. The man smiles and says that's just like him, a place to put a collar on them. He worries the association will interfere more aggressively. He says he won't force anyone to help, and they can give up. With his hand on his chest, he seems to be making his final decision about it. He then says he'll follow him as he did 10 years ago and asks him to let him know. With a smile, Guak says that's comforting to hear. Another man then asks about the new force he mentioned before. He reveals he was already prepared for this and also wants to help. The former master says he's marked by them and needs to play it right. The man then asks if he has any specific plan for the future. Gathered with the two, he begins to explain what his first step is. Pointing at Guangho, he leaves him with a confused expression. With a smile, he says he plans to use that guy for a while. Pointing at himself, Guangho asks if he's talking about him. In an open field, a rural landscape is shown with mountains in the background. Suddenly a portal opens in the middle of the field, with energy. An older man observes the portal from afar, seeming worried. With a serious look, he falls silent, just staring at the portal. A man says the chief should evacuate as the gate is dangerous. He complains that it's been a week and no hunter has appeared in the village. The man explains that dungeons in rural areas aren't profitable for them. Angrily, he curses the situation and has an expression of frustration. Suddenly, a man comes running and says, "Hunters from Seoul have arrived." Surprised, he asks if the hunters are really there to help. Complaining, Guangho wonders why he has to do this. Guak scolds him and tells him to control his expression so they won't suspect. The two residents wonder what they're doing, not understanding the scene. Clearing his throat, he prepares to do what was agreed upon with Guak. He thinks he made the wrong choice no matter how he looks at it. Putting on a headband, he tells the citizens not to worry about anything. A conversation starts about a rumor concerning a mysterious hunter. Talking about this hunter, he's been clearing dungeons that don't turn a profit. One of them remembers that the rumor is about Seo Guangho. Elsewhere, the hunter himself introduces himself as a volunteer to everyone. He then shows great exhaustion from having to continue with that. Two students approach, asking if he's really an S-rank hunter. Clenching his fists, he yells at the young people standing in front of him. Coming from behind, a man lands a hit on his head. Then he tells him to follow since today's dungeon is B rank. Already in front of the portal, the man asks if everyone is ready. Standing before the gate, he observes the dungeon entrance. Taejin then asks if he can really enter being just a C rank. In a flashback, someone is surprised to hear the name Kim Taejin. He confirms that he's thinking about taking the young man on missions. He explains that Taejin has potential and asks permission to teach him. Thanking the willingness, he says that Taejin would be grateful for his help. Then he confirms that he'll take the kid, receiving permission from the other. Back to the present, Taejin admits he was surprised to learn who he was. Then he expresses doubt whether he should really get involved between the two hunters. Guangho warns the young man that he'll leave him behind if he gets in the way. Landing another hit, the man asks why he was staring at him like that. He warns Guangho to be prepared if something happens to the rookie. Taejin then asks why they go to the countryside to raid dungeons. Agreeing with him, Guangho complains about the unprofitable places they frequent. Yelling at the hunter, Guak says it's to improve his reputation. He continues, asking if Guangho thinks the association will let it slide. Putting his hand to his head, he grumbles that nobody will notice the effort. Guak then explains that things won't change that fast, but he adds that they can be remembered for helping people with nobody. Still dissatisfied, Guangho says this seems like a totally lost cause. Saying that's enough talk, he positions himself in front of the others. With a smile, he announces that it's time to start the raid. Running toward the portal, he warns that the exploration has begun. Inside the dungeon, the group encounters a dense, thick forest. Walking through the woods, Guangho suddenly stops upon noticing something. Two creatures appear in front of him, putting him on high alert. Showing its fangs, the monster lets out a huge roar in his direction. Preparing for combat, he wields his weapons and assumes an attack position. He then advances rapidly against the enemies in front of him. With a single movement, he lands several strikes on the creatures at the same time. Watching the scene, Taejin is completely stunned by what he sees. Guak asks why he's so spaced out, and he says it's incredible. Then he advises Taejin to learn everything he can just by watching. Afterward, he comments that Guangho is skilled, despite being an idiot. Fighting alone, Guangho yells, asking them to stop talking and help him. Taking advantage of the moment, Taejin asks what his relationship is with Hunter Guangho. He responds that the guy made a big mistake and is now being punished. While Guangho fights, his partner says that his forgiveness depends on his actions. After a battle, Hunter Taejin seems somewhat relieved and tired. Standing near the monsters, he admits that B-rank enemies are still difficult. Praising his performance, Guak says he's almost at B-rank level. Watching the conversation between the two, Guang Ho makes an expression of pure discontent. He then complains about the praise, saying he was the one who did all the work. His partner reprimands him, saying, "You can't compare him to the rookie." Suddenly, the group stops upon sensing a presence approaching in the forest. Hidden among the trees, a monster observes the three hunters preparing. Revealing itself, the giant creature lets out a roar that echoes throughout the woods. With a smile, Guak says the dungeon boss has finally appeared. The monster then lets out another roar, showing all its fury to the group. Placing its hands on the ground, the creature prepares to initiate the attack. Attacking the ground, the monster forces the entire group to separate quickly. Guak warns that he'll leave that enemy for him to handle alone. Grumbling, he says his partner really knows how to exploit people well. Leaping toward the boss, he says he'll finish this quickly. Attempting a strike, the monster misses the hunter, who dodges in time. He complains, saying this whole situation is very irritating and exhausting. Preparing for the counterattack, he propels his blades with considerable force. Advancing with speed, he hits the creature with a cross strike. Feeling the impact of the attack, the monster lets out a huge roar of pain. Jumping over the creature, the hunter prepares his next move. He then tells the monster to just die quietly once and for all. With its last strength, the creature lets out a roar in the hunter's direction. Coming from above, he finishes the boss with a sequence of swift strikes. Landing safely, he watches the creature fall defeated right behind him. Impressed, Taejin recognizes that this is the power of an S-rank hunter. He asks Taejin if the fight he just saw was useful. With an awkward smile, he says it was so incredible he doesn't even know what to learn. Saying he'll get used to it, Guak warns him not to be impatient. Complaining once again, Guang Ho says he always does the heavy work alone. Guang Ho then asks when the message that the dungeon has been completed will appear. Finding the situation strange, he notes that the boss fell, but nothing has changed yet. Taejin the hunter notices something strange and asks what that is. Suddenly, a mysterious rift appears in front of the entire group present there. Surprised by the situation, he wonders what it is that appeared. Analyzing the rift, he realizes that this is a gate inside another. Taejin wonders what that strange rift could be. They all stare at the gate, admitting they've never seen anything like it. One thing is certain, he warns that it doesn't look like the exit. Ordering Taejin to go back, he says he'll explore the portal with Guang Ho. He tries to argue to go along, but his master stops him from continuing. Saying the dangers inside are great, he states it's not something for him. He then tells Taejun to leave and report the situation to Seokcheon. Butting into the conversation, Guang Ho asks if his opinion doesn't count. His partner then questions him to know if he doesn't want to enter the portal. Reluctant, Taejun agrees, knowing he'd only be a burden to them both. With a smile, the master approves the decision his apprentice made. Considering the matter closed, he turns toward the mysterious rift. Walking, he says he's counting on Taejin to watch their backs. With a serious expression, the boy confirms he'll do what was asked. While being pushed, Guang Ho complains, and Taejin asks them to be careful. On the other side of the portal, they find a completely desolate and hostile environment. Roaring in front of them, a creature identical to the previous boss appears to attack. Charging at the monster, Guang Ho lands a strong blow on the creature before him. He then spins his body, unleashing a sequence of strikes against the enemy. Calling the creatures annoying, he lands another powerful blow on one of the monsters. After finishing off the monster, he lands safely, already preparing for the next one. Complaining about the enemies, he says they haven't stopped appearing since they arrived. At that moment, one of the creatures leaps toward him for a surprise attack. With a quick movement, his partner intercepts the monster and hits it with a strike. The two hunters position themselves, surrounded by the bodies of creatures they defeated. He then asks what kind of dungeon this is, and the other says they're the previous bosses. Complaining, he says this nullifies the rank measurement and they can't leave. His partner reflects that rank B hunters would be in danger in this unknown place. He asks if he's sure they can leave just by defeating the boss of this place. Not knowing what to do, he questions again what kind of dungeon this is. Asking how long he's been a hunter, his partner looks at him surprised. He then responds it's been about 5 years since he started his journey. At that, he reflects that even for a rank S, an unknown dungeon is new. His companion warns to forget common sense, because anything can happen there. With a smile, he says all this reminds him of old times. At that moment, a monster's cry catches the attention of both hunters. Several other creatures identical to the previous ones emerge to attack the two hunters. Guang Ho then complains that the enemies simply won't stop coming at them. Suddenly, he looks up, noticing a new threat approaching them. Descending from the skies, a creature with enormous wings flies toward the duo. With a growl, the winged monster prepares to begin its attack. Landing on a rock, the creature lets out a great roar in their direction. He then asks if that must be the boss, and the other says he doesn't know. At that, the creature startles, noticing some kind of movement in the area. Growling furiously, the monster stares at its target with its eyes glowing intensely. With a smile, he says they'll find out if it's the boss when they fight. At the top of the rock, the winged creature lets out a great roar at everyone. Meanwhile, the monsters on the ground also advance to initiate the attack. Shouting for them all to come at once, his partner warns him to be careful. Jumping into battle, he says of course he'll be careful. Fighting together, the two hunters land strikes on the creatures surrounding them. While attacking, he shouts saying the monsters are no match for him. Growling with anger, the winged monster watches the battle happening below. Beating its wings forcefully, the creature prepares to enter the combat. It then flies away from the rock, initiating its attack against the two. Growling with fury, the creature prepares to launch its powerful attack. Firing a massive blow, the monster launches its attack against the duo. Surprised by the strike, he shouts for his partner to be very careful. They dodge the attack, which even hits the other monsters in its path. He then comments that the boss attacks without caring about its subordinates. Growling, the winged creature flies in circles, keeping distance from the two hunters. He comments that the attack cleared the area, but they don't know how to deal with the monster. Telling him to watch, his partner starts searching for something on the ground. Grabbing an enormous stone, he says that should solve their problem. Guangho asks what he intends to do, if he's going to use the rock like a slingshot. With a confident smile, his partner confirms the idea is exactly that. With considerable effort, he then lifts the giant rock he picked from the ground. Spinning his body, he hurls the stone with all his strength toward the monster. The rock hits dead on, striking the creature right in the middle of its face. Dazed by the blow, the monster is left without reaction from the strong impact received. Guangho then asks what that was and if he also uses ranged abilities. Responding it wasn't an ability, he says he just threw it with all his strength. Impressed, he thinks about how his partner has such a monstrous body. The creature then lets out a great roar, showing all its fury. He realizes that now the monster seems to be very angry at them. Screaming furiously, the creature advances, flying toward the two hunters. Wielding his weapon, he says the monster gave up its only advantage. Seeing the enemy approach, he calls it to combat with a smile. Changing scenes, Taejin reports that 6 hours have passed since they entered. With a serious expression, Park Seok says he has a bad feeling about this. Looking at the portal, he wonders if they should just keep waiting there. Suddenly, Taejin notices something strange is happening at the location. Pointing at the gate, he says it's shrinking, indicating the dungeon's end. Relieved, Park Seok comments the old man succeeded and they can breathe now. Taejun then panics, because the portal is almost closed and no one came out. Worried, the two watch the portal diminish faster and faster in front of them. Park Seok then shows confusion about the comment the hunter Taejin made. Shouting desperately, Taejin warns the gate is closing completely. At that, the portal disappears, leaving only a trail of particles behind. Shocked, he wonders what the hell happened inside that mysterious dungeon. Alone on the road, the two stand still without understanding anything about the situation. On a deserted bridge, the night drags on as the wait continues endlessly. Standing on the road, Park Seok checks his watch impatiently. Taejin arrives, saying he couldn't get a response from hunters Guak or Seo. With a tense expression, he receives the news of the disappearance with deep concern. Shouting, he orders the area to be searched and any trace to be reported. He then wonders aloud where the hell the hunter ended up. Inside the dungeon, the winged creature snarls, hovering over the two hunters. Letting out a deafening screech, the monster displays all its accumulated hostility. Diving at high speed, the creature charges to attack the pair of hunters. Readying his weapon, he calls the monster to come and fight already. With its claws, the creature tries to land a direct hit on the hunter. He counterattacks with a strike that sends the monster flying away. Fallen on the ground, the monster is finally defeated after the long battle. Taking a deep breath, he turns and asks if the fight is finally over. His partner congratulates him and also asks if everything ended there. He questions him if, as an S rank, he was just going to stand there watching. Complaining about young people these days, he stares at him with an irritated look. Suddenly, a giant foot stomps near them, startling the pair of hunters. A new enormous monster appears in front of them, growling with its eyes glowing. Surprised, he asks if the creature they defeated wasn't the dungeon boss. The two prepare, getting into combat position for the new threat. Emerging from the ground, another giant creature appears, completely surprising the two hunters. Guangho asks what those things are, and the other says he doesn't know. He admits he'd never seen a dungeon as unpredictable as that one before. Growling in their direction, the furry monster glares at the two with fury. The other giant creature also prepares for the imminent attack against them. Seeing the monsters approaching, he says they're coming to attack. The two giant creatures advance toward the hunters to begin combat. To everyone's surprise, the two monsters start fighting each other. He then asks why they're fighting, and Guangho says he doesn't know. He wonders what kind kind of crazy place they're in. Suddenly, the two feel a strange sound and cover their ears tightly. Covering his ears, he wonders what hellish noise just appeared. Feeling intense pain, the two hunters keep writhing on the ground. Then he notices something strange happening to his own body in that place. A message appears saying the dungeon was finally completed successfully. Then another window informs him that he'll receive a blessing as a reward. The system then says he gained resistance and total immunity to cold. His partner is also affected by the same effect, leaving both surprised by everything. Right after that, the bodies of the two hunters simply begin to disappear. Changing scenery, he finds himself in a completely different place, and it's snowing. Walking through the snow, he tries to understand what just happened there. Walking alone, he realizes he left the dungeon but doesn't know where he is. He notices that despite the cold, he doesn't feel anything because of the blessing. Questioning the coincidence, he wonders what this blessing he received is. While walking through the snow, he hears a growl coming from somewhere nearby. A giant creature appears in front of him, letting out a great roar of fury. He then wonders if he still hasn't managed to get out of the dungeon. With a roar, the monster charges to attack, preparing a strike against him. Telling the creature to shut up, he lands a hit right on its face. After the attack, the giant monster falls in the snow, completely defeated by him. He realizes that creature's level wasn't anything special to him. Suddenly, he hears a voice in the distance, which leaves him quite surprised. Paying closer attention, he realizes he heard a human voice. Running through the forest, he decides to follow the sound to discover where it came from. Hidden behind a tree, he observes the scene unfolding ahead. Then he sees a group of people being attacked by two giant creatures. The people scream desperately, but he can't understand what they're saying. Seeing the group, he realizes they're foreign hunters in trouble there. One of the hunters advances, landing a hit on the creature with her weapon. One of the hunters screams desperately for their leader who was attacked. Hidden, he watches the fight and thinks the situation looks dangerous. The group's leader is hit squarely by the creature's strike. With the impact, she's thrown far away with no chance to react. The creature then stares at her closely, letting out a great roar in front of her. Unable to move, she just watches the monster approaching her. Then a quick strike appears suddenly, interrupting the creature's attack. He then appears, hitting the monster and saving the hunter from danger. Seeing it was dangerous, he warns the group that he's going to help them. Surprised, the leader asks who he is upon noticing he's Asian. He then asks her to speak Korean, because he doesn't understand her language. The hunter is confused, repeating that he's a Korean who appeared there. Her companion wonders how he got there, finding everything very suspicious. Irritated with the situation, he turns to face the group of hunters. He then shouts, saying he's helping and they're just standing there watching. Advising the leader, she says he's helping and they should focus on the monsters. Agreeing with her, the leader says the priority is taking care of the monsters. Looking in his direction, she then decides to accept the help he offered. Then the leader orders everyone in the group to help the unknown hunter. With a smile, he says they're finally starting to understand each other. Running into the fight, he warns everyone else to be careful. One of the hunters takes down the last monster remaining at the location. The group leader asks if everyone is okay after the long battle. One of the hunters asks what they should do with the man who appeared. He then turns around and catches the attention of the group leader. She questions him, asking how he managed to enter that restricted dungeon. He complains that he doesn't understand anything, and asks them to speak in Korean. The hunter says they can't communicate, and that he's suspicious. Walking toward him, she calls him a Korean hunter and stares at him. She then invites him to follow them to get out of there safely. Confused, he wonders if they're asking for help to clear the dungeon. With a smile, he says he'll help the group of hunters. The leader is surprised, asking if he was thanking them. Shaking her hand, he says he'll accept the thanks after they get out. She then tells them to continue the clearing, and the whole group agrees with her. Watching the group, he comments on how lively the young women are. Standing before a cave, the group prepares for the next challenge. One of the hunters warns that, according to the radar, the dungeon boss is there. The leader praises her companion's work and turns to the group. Curious, he asks about the ability and whether she can detect the boss. Shouting at him, she pushes him away and asks what he's doing. The leader asks Anna to calm down, and she apologizes for her attitude. The group leader then turns around and gets the Korean hunter's attention. She warns that although they let him follow, they still don't trust him. With a serious look, she continues, saying that any suspicious act from him will be enough for them to eliminate him on the spot without hesitation. Not understanding, he says he doesn't know what she said, but it doesn't sound good. The leader realizes that somehow he managed to understand her warning. Ending the conversation, she warns everyone to stay alert from there on. She reinforces the warning, asking no one to lower their guard and to be careful. With serious expressions, all the group members confirm they understood the message. Thoughtful, he watches the group preparing to enter the boss's cave. The leader asks Anna what the boss's reaction is inside. Anna confirms that the dungeon boss is right ahead of them in the cave. The leader finds it strange, saying she can't sense any presence nearby. He suddenly stops, realizing there's something wrong with that place. Turning to the group, he warns them all to be very careful. Confused, the group leader can't understand the reason for his warning. Suddenly, the ground starts to shake, startling all the hunters. The leader senses the danger and prepares for what's coming. Shouting, she warns everyone that the danger is beneath them in the ground. The ice floor breaks, and the whole group starts to fall. Desperate, the hunters scream as they all fall together into the hole. The entire group falls into a deeper place inside that same cave. The leader gets up and asks if all the group members are okay. One of the hunters responds yes, confirming everything was fine with them. Looking up, the leader wonders if they fell from that place. Suddenly, she senses a strange presence and turns around, startled. Before her, a giant, shadowy creature emerges, revealing itself to be the boss. Desperate, the hunters scream for the leader, who let her guard down at that moment. Roaring, the monster attacks the leader, who was right in front of it. The ground breaks from the force of the giant creature's blow. The hunters are shocked by the scene, unable to do anything to help. The creature is surprised to see that its attack didn't hit the target. With a look of astonishment, the monster sees the hunter holding its strike. With great strength, the leader manages to stop the dungeon boss's attack. She feels the pressure of the blow, making a great effort to withstand it. Growling with rage, the monster stares at her, surprised by her strength. The creature then begins to put more force into its powerful attack. Feeling the pressure increase, the group leader screams in pain and effort. One of the hunters announces she'll help, firing a support strike. Another hunter lands a blow from above, but it has no effect at all. The monster takes several strikes at once, but nothing happens to it. Frightened, the hunters watch the scene, not believing what was happening. Growling, the monster ignores the attacks and turns toward the hunters. The creature gets irritated with the attacks and decides to focus on one of the hunters. One of them realizes that the group's attacks aren't working on the monster. Trapped by the monster, the leader can't break free and despairs. She then wonders if she's going to end up dying like that in its hands. Suddenly, the monster turns around, as if it had heard something. Pointing at the monster, he asks if he can take care of that dangerous thing. Confused, the leader doesn't understand anything the Korean hunter is saying. He then faces the monster and says he'll take that as permission. Desperate, one of the hunters asks what he's trying to do now. He then prepares himself, standing face to face with the giant dungeon boss. With a smile, he tells the monster that the fight is about to begin. With a smile, he asks if they should finish this quickly. Outside, a city in ruins is covered by the snow that won't stop. A man in uniform carefully observes the portal that's open there. He then asks how long Angela's group has been inside the dungeon. His subordinate informs him that about 96 hours have passed. Worried, he fears that the group's raid has failed completely. Suddenly, the gate begins to show signs that it's going to close. He then wonders if the group managed to complete the dungeon in time. The portal begins to shrink, indicating that the exploration has come to an end. Excited, the man celebrates the safe return of his goddess, Angela. He then approaches to receive her, happy that she's returned safely. Confused, he encounters an unfamiliar face coming out from inside the portal. Startled, the man asks who the person in front of him is. Outside, the man stares down the soldiers who were present there. He wonders where he is and realizes he's finally made it out of the dungeon. One of the soldiers points his weapon and shouts, asking who the hell he is. The soldier wonders what happened to Angela and her group. He then asks if the man was with the women inside. Shouting, the soldier asks what happened to the group and how he got in. Startled, the man backs away as the hunter approaches him and the weapon. He then warns that he'll shoot if the hunter takes one more step. With a threatening look, he stares at the soldier, who begins to tremble. Just then, a hunter appears and lands a blow that sends the soldier flying. Calling out for Angela, the man sees the group leader emerging from the portal. He calls for backup, saying they found a suspect and that Angela is safe. The group leader shouts Ivan's name, who had just been attacked. The man then says that with Angela's help, they'll take care of the suspect. At that moment, one of the hunters lands a blow and knocks him to the ground. Surprised, the man asks what Angela is doing attacking him. She then shouts for Ivan to drop the weapon if he doesn't want to die. The man is left understanding nothing of what the group leader said. She apologizes for the rudeness, explaining that he got startled by the stranger. He asks why she did that, and says he was just going to teach some manners. The man on the ground stays silent, just watching the situation unfold. He then takes the weapon from the soldier's hand, who can't react. He questions whether a weapon would work against a skilled hunter like him. At that moment, he breaks the weapon with his hands. He advises him to act more calmly if he's really a commander. The fallen soldier just stares at him, silent and frightened. One of the hunters says he would eliminate them if they irritated him again. At a Russian military base, snow falls endlessly outside. Sitting in a room, he waits in silence for someone to arrive. Impatient, He wonders how much longer they'll make him wait. Looking at the security camera, he complains that it already feels like he's waited an hour. The door opens, and he turns to see who finally arrived. A tall, bald man enters the room, staring at the Korean hunter. The man observes him with a serious look, analyzing him in total silence. He then realizes that the man in front of him seems quite fierce. The man asks if he's Korean, which leaves him a bit surprised. He then wonders if the man can speak his language somehow. Resting his hands on the table, the man leans forward and stares at him closely. With a serious look, he approaches, ready to ask his question. He then asks the hunter if he likes K-pop idols. Surprised and confused, he repeats the question, not understanding the reason for it. The man says he's a K-pop fan and really wants to visit Korea. Another man enters and asks if the lieutenant is there to have fun. The lieutenant apologizes to Major Romanov, who stares at him seriously. He then apologizes for the delay, explaining that they were looking for an interpreter. He explains that Lieutenant Gorbachev will be the interpreter for the conversation. The major formally introduces himself as Ivan Romanov to the Korean hunter. He then introduces himself back as Gwak Pilseong, a hunter from Korea. With a serious expression, Major Romanov repeats the hunter's name. In another room, the man asks Angela what happened in the dungeon. She explains that the monsters were strong and that they were in danger. She then turns, looking at the hunter who was in the other room. With a serious look, she says he defeated the boss with one blow. She advises not to provoke him, since the priority is to discover his identity. The major listens to the report in silence, processing all the information received. He then turns and says he'll ask the suspect hunter directly. He questions him about how he entered the military zone without permission. The major continues, saying there are no records of his entry into the country, warning that this could lead to an international dispute if he doesn't explain. The two then stare at each other in silence, creating a tense atmosphere. Ignoring the questions, he repeats the major's name, Ivan, out loud. He then asks where exactly he is, since he doesn't recognize the place. Irritated, the major shouts for him to answer his questions first. He says he doesn't know how he got there, but that it was an accident. The major refuses to believe the story, finding everything very suspicious. He says the truth has been told, and whether to believe it or not is up to him. He then insists, saying that now it's the major's turn to answer. In silence, the major stares at him, thinking about what he should do next. He then reveals that they're in Russia's 8th containment zone. Shocked, he's surprised to learn he ended up so far from home. The major explains that the president was killed and that they lost territory. He continues, saying the country has faced difficulties since everything happened. Because of the unstable situation, he says they need to be cautious with strangers. He crosses his arms, listening attentively to Major Romanov's entire explanation. Suddenly, Angela enters the room, saying they have a big problem. Worried, the major asks Angela what's happening that's so serious. With a serious expression, she begins to explain the situation to him. Meanwhile, in an ice forest, the entire ground begins to shake. At this, the soldiers feel the tremor, becoming completely frightened by what's happening. Emerging in front of the troops, a giant creature suddenly appears. In the ancient Russian city of Tsarograd, the battle against the monsters continues. The soldiers fire, but the creatures advance without flinching from the blows. One of the soldiers warns they won't hold out much longer like this. Suddenly, one of the men hears a noise and turns around, startled. Roaring, a monster attacks one of the soldiers, who screams in pain from the blow. Growling, the creature stares down the soldier, who lies fallen and unresponsive. The monster then lets out a massive roar, preparing to finish off the soldier. A hunter appears and lands a strike right on the creature's horn. Running, he advances to continue the attack against the monster staring at him. The hunter approaches the fallen soldier, preparing to protect him. A man arrives and asks if the soldiers are okay after the attack. They recognize him as Major General Garov, the hero of the Russian Federation. Shouting, he announces that reinforcements will arrive soon to help everyone. He then orders his men to hold the front line at all costs. The general tells no one to retreat, because their families will be in danger. Standing at attention, the soldiers confirm they understood the general's orders. With a serious look, General Garov prepares for battle. Angela reports that the monster horde from Sector 12 is advancing westward. She continues, saying that if they don't stop the monsters, the city, with its 100,000 inhabitants, Tsarograd will be in grave, imminent danger. Major Romanov listens to the report in silence with a worried expression. He then calls Lieutenant Gorbachev, who responds promptly to the call. The major orders him to gather all the hunters and soldiers from the base. He then turns to the Korean hunter, thinking about what to do. The major orders Angela to stay behind and watch the suspicious man. She questions him, saying he's crazy for leaving her out. Shouting, the major reprimands her, calling her by her full name. He then reinforces that it's an order and that she must watch the man. The major calls the lieutenant and the two leave the interrogation room. Frustrated with the order, Angela stares at him with a look of anger. Walking down the corridor, the Major reflects on the difficult decision he made. He says he doesn't want to tremble with fear anymore, worried about her return. Irritated, Angela punches the wall, frustrated with the order she received from the Major. She realizes that Ivan left her out to protect her from danger, but she feels useless as a soldier for not being able to fight with them. He observes the scene, not understanding the argument and confusion of the moment. Confused, he asks what the hell is happening in that interrogation room. She apologizes for the scene, trying to compose herself in front of the hunter. He approaches and says that, although he doesn't know what happened, she should fight. He advises her not to accept what she doesn't understand and to grow. Surprised by his words, she stares at him in silence, thoughtful. He says she's making an unpleasant face, and she doesn't understand. She decides that she can't follow Ivan's order and needs to act. Angela reflects that if he's not an enemy, he could be useful. She then turns and asks a favor of the hunter who's there. On the battlefield, the soldiers fire at one of the giant creatures. The monster protects itself, but the soldiers' shots don't seem to work. The bullets ricochet off the creature's shell, causing no damage whatsoever. The squad leader shouts for all soldiers to cease fire. He then wonders if the attack they made worked in any way. The creature reveals itself, showing it suffered no damage from the attacks. The monster stares at the soldiers, who retreat in fear of the enormous creature. It then raises its body, preparing an attack against all the soldiers. With one blow, the monster throws several soldiers away with its strength. Fallen on the ground, the squad leader tries to get up, but he's injured. Another creature approaches, walking slowly toward the soldier. The monster advances, preparing an attack to finish off the squad leader. The man feels immense pressure, becoming completely paralyzed with fear. At that moment, one of the hunters intervenes, creating a protective barrier. The creature screams in pain as it's hit by the barrier that protected him. One of the huntresses leaps, preparing an aerial attack against the monster. With her axe, she lands a powerful blow on the giant creature there. The monster recoils from the pain of the blow, staggering backward without reaction. After the attack, the huntress lands safely on the snowy ground. The squad leader wonders if they're from the subjugation unit. The Major approaches and asks the soldier if he's okay. Introducing himself, he says he's the commander of the 4th subjugation unit. The soldier thanks him for the help, shaking Major Romanov's hand. The Major then asks about General Garov's location at the moment. One of the huntresses warns that a horde of monsters is approaching from the east. In the distance, several giant creatures walk toward the group of hunters. Desperate, she asks what they should do with so many monsters coming. The Major says it's the first time he's seen so many monsters together. He finds it strange to see so many different species of monsters gathered there. Thinking about the situation, he notices it's almost as if they were fleeing. He concludes they look like animals running away, being chased by something else. Just then, an enormous shadow rushes past quickly through all the trees. Revealing its presence, a new creature lets out a growl in their direction. In a distant place, snow fell endlessly over the frozen mountains. Running through the forest, a man comes face to face with a giant monster roaring at him. Nearby, a group of armed soldiers faced another enormous creature approaching. He mentions that the magic bullets are running out, and his partner asks about using regular bullets. Angrily, he strikes his colleague, calling him an idiot. Then he explains that only weapons with magic stones work against high-level monsters. Pointing to other hunters, he asks if his colleague sees them fighting. Then he questions what allows them to face the monsters, asking if it's superhuman strength. Saying that's part of the truth, he prepares to give the explanation. He states it's because of the power contained in the magic stones they use. Besides hunters, he says they're also called by another name, revealing then that they're known as the chosen ones by the gods. At that moment, an enormous monster appears in front of the soldiers, screaming very loudly. With a single blow, the creature strikes the ground and sends everyone flying through the air. Seeing the scene, a woman prepares to use her skill, imprisoning Swamp. Caught by surprise, the monster becomes completely immobilized by the skill on the ground. With its eyes glowing, the creature lets out a roar of pure fury. From up high, a hunter launches a strike that descends at high speed. Upon hitting the target, the attack explodes and raises an enormous curtain of smoke. Then, another even larger monster appears roaring at the hunters. Turning around, she asks Sophie to use the buffs, and the girl agrees. Then she begins to conjure the weapon enchantment and the defense enhancement. Soon after, the warrior also receives the life enhancement enchantment. Running at the creature, the hunter advances screaming to deliver a blow. Getting up close, she enters a direct exchange of blows with the monster. Then she activates her skill, shouting the name Berserker's Fury. With her axe, she executes a precise cut and finishes the attack. Taking the damage, the creature is thrown back with a massive wound. After the fight, she says that wasn't easy to handle at all. Hearing a sound, she turns and asks what that was. Seeing the soldier fallen on the ground, the immobilized monster advances toward him. She complains that the enemies seem endless, continuing to appear. Shouting at the captain, she says this situation is never ending. He reflects that with their current strength, they won't be able to hold out much longer. Thinking aloud, he wonders if the only option is to abandon Sarograd. Hearing a strange noise, the captain turns his face, completely terrified. Right in front of him, an enormous creature appears, roaring and ready to attack. In desperation, the two huntresses who were nearby scream the captain's name. Out of nowhere, a man appears and lands a blow that sends the creature flying. After saving the captain, the man lands on the ground in combat position. Running to him, a soldier asks if the major is feeling all right. Looking at his savior, he asks why he's there. He says he thought something serious was happening, but it seems worse than he imagined. Very irritated, the captain yells at Angela for bringing an unknown person to battle. She states he'll be a valuable resource and that the priority is defeating the monsters. Not believing what he hears, the captain can only manage to call her name. Saying she's a soldier, she states she can't hide like a coward. He yells that if they keep fighting like this, they'll only have more losses. Desperate, he insists they must abandon the city of Sarograd while they can. Then the newcomer asks if the captain is really thinking of giving up now. He then comments that it seems the commander is the weakest of everyone there. Pointing at the captain, he tells him to look at his men and see if they look defeated. All the hunters around show an expression of pure determination on their faces. Angela and the captain stare at each other for a moment, remaining in total silence. The man then asks the commander to remember that moment well. He warns that when the leader gives up, that's when the fight truly ends. After hearing the words, the captain stays silent, processing the situation. One of the soldiers approaches and asks the major if he needs an interpreter. He responds saying he doesn't need interpretation, while looking at the newcomer. Maintaining a serious expression, the captain continues staring at the man before him. He says he's going to hunt monsters, so he asks them to think about what to do. Turning to the captain, Angela calls him directly by his name, Ivan. She then states that no matter what he says, she's going to fight. Then she adds that this is a soldier's duty to repay the trust. Turning her back, she calls everyone to go with her, and the others agree. Seeing the scene, the soldier who was nearby calls the major's attention. With his eyes closed, he reflects for a moment on the words he heard. Standing up, he yells to get all the soldiers' attention. He says he's ashamed for showing such a despicable side of himself. He admits he forgot there are battles from which one cannot retreat. Declaring his decision, he says they'll fight to the end for victory. He shouts that this is their duty to the citizens who believe in them. In response, all the soldiers shout yes, agreeing with the orders. Regaining his posture, the captain walks in front of all his soldiers. With authority in his voice, he prepares to give the order to all the troops. Raising his fist, he gives the final order for all his soldiers to fight. Observing the captain's change, Angela and the soldier get ready. All the other hunters and soldiers prepare for the great battle about to begin. Seeing the captain's decision, he gives a slight smile of satisfaction. The scene shifts as snow falls relentlessly in the forest during the night. Ready for battle, the mysterious man grips his sword and waits for the attack. In that instant, two creatures advance, growling and ready to strike with everything they've got. He then uses his ability, saying to enchant the weapon, and prepares himself. With a single strike, he lunges forward and hits both creatures at once. Meanwhile, another hunter positions himself to fight a giant monster. The captain shouts to his men, ordering them to provide cover for the hunters. Immediately, the soldiers begin firing their weapons at all the monsters. Right after, the creatures are hit by a rain of blows from the soldiers. At this moment, the captain thinks the battle is finally turning in their favor. With a precise strike, he destroys several monsters that surrounded him. After the attack, the remaining monsters retreat in fear just from looking at him. Suddenly, he hears a scream and turns around with a frightened expression. In the distance, the giant monster lets out a roar that echoes throughout the entire forest. With a devastating blow, the creature attacks the soldiers who were on the ground. Running toward the giant monster, he prepares to land a hit. Leaping into the air, he readies a strike to hit the monster from above. With a vertical blow, he strikes the creature squarely with his sword. Landing on the ground, he watches the creature fall right behind him. Impressed, the soldier asks who the man is that defeated the monster alone. Angela just watches the man from afar, remaining silent before the scene. She says it's incredible, as he defeats monsters using few abilities. Then she comments that he seems young, but his technique is very experienced. With a serious expression, he says he hopes his prediction is wrong. The blonde hunter advances screaming, ready to strike the remaining monsters. After finishing off the creature, she positions herself with her axe in hand. She tells the leader the area is almost clear, and Angela responds, "That's good." Running toward her, a soldier calls her name, leaving her quite confused. He informs her they received news from General Garov's unit, who held the line. Seeing the result, he says it's a miracle they suffered little damage. Walking through the forest, the soldier turns around upon hearing a strange noise. Right behind him, a monster appears suddenly, roaring in a very threatening way. With a quick movement, the mysterious man rushes forward to protect the soldier. After defeating the creature, he stands in front of it with his sword. A soldier runs up and asks if the major is okay, and he responds yes. He then warns to never let your guard down, especially in the moment of greatest danger. Thanking him profusely, the major says the mysterious man just saved his life. He apologizes for his rudeness, admitting they wouldn't have won without his help. The man interrupts him, saying the fight isn't over yet, leaving the major confused. He then questions the mass migration of monsters, saying it's not natural. Then he explains that monsters are a general term for creatures with magic stones. He continues saying that different species of monsters are usually hostile to each other. Then he asks if it isn't strange to see so many types together going in the same direction. Suddenly, a strong snowstorm begins to fall on all of them. Looking up, one of the soldiers asks why it started snowing out of nowhere. He says he had a similar experience like this once before. Then he explains the monsters gathered to flee from a stronger predator. Emerging from the snow, a strange creature appears roaring at all the hunters. Seeing the scene, Angela turns and asks what that thing is. He then says he hoped he was wrong, but his hunch was right. In the middle of the snow, a gigantic monster emerges in front of everyone. With its red eyes, the creature stares at everyone and lets out a terrifying roar. A soldier shouts he's never seen a monster with such a frightening size. Desperate, the soldier asks for orders, but the major doesn't know what to do. Not knowing how to react, the major wonders if they can defeat that creature. He orders the major to evacuate the soldiers and nearby citizens from there. Then he warns it's impossible to hurt the creature with normal weapons. Seeing the situation, the major asks what he intends to do next. With a smile on his face, he asks if the major is talking to him. He then turns and says he's obviously going to fight the monster. Hearing the response, the major says he can only have a death wish. After a moment, he continues in silence, just observing the situation. Giving a smile, he says the man made him strange too. With a confident smile, he responds he'll have to work hard to match up. Asking for forgiveness, he trusts only him to save all the people there. The man simply responds that it's fine, accepting the major's mission. With a determined look, he tells the captain to leave everything to him. Falling hard, a piece of the monster hits the ground violently, making the ground tremble. The giant creature keeps approaching everyone. With a loud noise, the creature's paw steps deep into the snow. In the middle of the blizzard, the enormous monster finally reveals itself completely. From afar, Angela watches the creature approaching, staying silent. Turning to her men, she yells for everyone to prepare for battle. At that, the archers position themselves in formation, ready for the first attack. With a war cry, she gives the order for everyone to fire. Firing their bows, the soldiers launch a rain of strikes against the monster. Upon hitting the target, the strikes explode on the giant creature's body. Without suffering a single scratch, the creature only lets out a low growl. Seeing the result, the mage orders the magic unit to begin the attack. Gathering their power, the magic unit prepares a massive fire strike. Direct hit, the fire strike hits the creature's face at high speed. With a huge impact, the attack explodes and raises a dense smoke. Wrapped in smoke, the creature's silhouette reveals itself little by little. Worried, Angela asks if the attack is having any effect. With its eyes glowing, the creature emerges from the smoke without any injuries. Then the monster releases a wave of freezing strikes with a roar. Being hit, all the hunters and soldiers are thrown backward. Feeling the cold, she complains that the blizzard is too strong. From the ground, several ice spikes begin to emerge everywhere. Frightened, one of the soldiers realizes his body is freezing little by little. Screaming in pain, the soldier is completely frozen by the creature's strike. Standing in the middle of the ice, the creature lets out a very intimidating growl. Seeing the danger, Angela yells for everyone to retreat as far as possible. She continues saying the monster is surrounded by cold air. Using its dragon's roar, the creature freezes everything around it. Without hesitation, the mysterious man lets out a shout and prepares to advance. Running at high speed, he goes alone toward the giant monster. Growling at the man, the creature prepares for the imminent combat. Then the monster lets out a huge roar, trying to intimidate the man in front of it. Seeing the scene, Angela yells saying it's reckless and that he'll freeze. With a smile, he tells her not to worry about the situation. The cold resistance ability completely nullifies all damage of that type. He says he just happens to have the perfect ability to deal with this monster. Unable to believe what she sees, Angela is completely shocked by the scene. With a single strike, he advances, destroying the ice spikes in his path. Leaping really high, he advances toward the giant monster's head. Getting close, he lands a powerful strike directly on the creature's face. Feeling the impact, the giant monster lets out a great roar of pure pain. He asks what the problem is, saying the fight barely started and it's already suffering. Unable to believe it, Angela says that simply cannot be happening. She wonders how he's fine, since the cold air hasn't disappeared. Taking advantage of the chance, He lands another devastating strike right on the monster's head. He thinks having the perfect ability for this monster is too convenient. Suspicious, he thinks this whole situation is very fishy. With much rage, the creature lets out a roar right in his face. At that, the monster spins and attacks him with a tail strike. Being hit, he's thrown far away and breaks the ice floor. Caught by surprise, he can't react in time to the next attack. The creature begins to gather an enormous amount of power in its mouth. Then the monster prepares to fire a powerful ice strike. He realizes the monster was aiming for the moment he'd dodge. With full force, the creature fires a devastating ice strike. Being hit head-on, he can't escape the enormous freezing strike. Out of nowhere, an older man appears wrapped in a pillar of fire. His fire attack completely blocks the monster's freezing breath. Looking at the man, he asks if the young man is feeling all right. Turning to the monster, he warns he'll help in the battle. Surprised, he wonders if the older man is speaking Korean. Then he asks directly if the older man can speak Korean. He responds he learned a little because his wife is Korean. Then he asks if it's true he appeared out of nowhere in the dungeon. Being caught by surprise, he's left not knowing what to answer. He says the important thing now is they need to defeat the monster. Agreeing, he introduces himself as Guak Pil Seong and says the man speaks with sense. The man introduces himself as Garov, an S-rank hunter and commander. Giving a smile, he says as an old warrior, he feels a certain affinity. With much rage, the giant creature lets out a roar at both of them. Garov comments it seems the monster is irritated for being blocked. With a serious look, he simply says, that's good for them. Calling his new partner, he says then it's time for them to go. With a loud shout, Garov prepares to launch his first attack. Leaping high into the air, he unleashes a massive fire strike with his sword. As it hits the monster, the attack causes a huge explosion. Suddenly, the creature releases a blast of freezing air that strikes him. Caught in midair, his body starts to freeze little by little. Looking at him, the creature stares while he tries to resist the cold. He thinks that the monster's cold air makes the fight much harder. Seizing the chance, the young man advances, leaping toward the huge monster. With his sword, he lands a spinning strike directly on the creature's body. Filled with rage, the creature lets out a roar at the young man in the air. He shouts that he'll fight up close and needs support. With a serious look, Garov tells him he understood the plan. Then he wonders how the young man isn't affected by the intense cold. Finding it interesting, he thinks he never imagined supporting someone in battle. With a quick movement, he advances to deliver another strike on the monster. Gathering power in its mouth, the creature prepares for a new attack. Then the monster fires a powerful ice blast in his direction. He shouts, saying he won't fall for the same trick twice. Dodging the attack, he jumps over the blast while the creature roars. After landing, the two hunters face each other on the frozen ground. Snarling, the creature surrounds itself with enormous ice spikes rising from the ground. Garov comments that the monster is tough and doesn't look like it's going down. He notices that the cold air around the creature has weakened considerably. This means the damage is finally starting to pile up on the monster. He says that in his country there's a saying, and Garov asks what it is. With a smile, he says that a tree struck 9 times falls on the 10th. Garov laughs and says he really liked that saying he mentioned. He then advances, saying they'll keep striking the tree until it falls. From afar, Angela shouts that they'll also provide support for the two. One of the hunters prepares and fires an arrow strike at the monster. The mage in the rear launches a massive fire blast to help with the attack. Flying through the air, the projectile goes at high speed toward the monster. Hitting the target, the blast causes a huge explosion on the creature's body. Feeling the damage, the creature lets out a loud roar of pure pain. Shouting, he lands a powerful spinning strike with his sword on the monster. Filled with rage, the monster turns and roars at him. He says it's comforting to have people you can count on. Staring at the creature, he searches for an opening to attack. He notices a crack in the shell, wondering if it's a weak point. With a determined look, he says that was good news. Shouting, here he goes. The young man charges at the monster. Garov shouts that he'll provide support and concentrates his firepower. The strike hits the monster, creating an explosion right in its face. Heading toward the weak point, he readies his sword for the attack. With determination, he shouts that this is the end of the line. With all his strength, he comes down and lands a devastating blow on the creature. Hitting the weak point, the creature's shell begins to crack. With the impact of the blow, his sword ends up breaking into pieces. He then realizes that the sword couldn't handle the force and shattered. Seeing the situation, Garov shouts and gets the young man's attention. Right after, he throws his sword, telling the young man to catch it. Catching the weapon in the air, he says that's an excellent sword. He then warns that he'll make good use of the new weapon. Leaping into the air, he prepares to deliver the final blow on the creature. With a loud shout, he concentrates all his strength into the attack. Then he lands a vertical strike that cuts the monster from top to bottom. After finishing the blow, he lands safely on the ground. Hit dead on, the giant creature's body starts to fall to the ground. A message then appears, warning that the field boss has been defeated. In disbelief, Angela says they finally managed to defeat the huge monster. Giving a smile, Garov says they really managed to do it. At that moment, a system message appears, warning that the dungeon has been completed. Sitting on the ground, he says everything had finally ended. Right after, another message informs about a special reward for the victory. Warning that he obtained a rare ability, the notification leaves him confused. Stopped for a moment, he just stares at the notification of the new ability. In front of the creature, he continues thinking about the reward he received. Outside, an officer gives instructions to the soldiers in front of the building. Inside the facility, the young man waits in silence while looking out the window. Approaching him, a soldier apologizes for making him wait. He explains that everyone was busy repairing the damage from the recent battle. Then he says they owe him a great debt and don't know how to repay it. He responds that people should help each other, asking only to be sent to Korea. Just then, an older man appears and asks if he really intends to go back. The soldier is startled and identifies him as Major General Garov. Approaching closer, Garov asks if he's considered the idea of staying there. He reveals that their country is in crisis because of monsters. That's why he asks the hero of the battle to stay in exchange for good compensation. Garov then asks directly what his answer to the proposal would be. Without hesitation, he looks at the general and says he declines the offer. The general questions whether the problem is the compensation or his attachment to his homeland. He responds that he doesn't want to be a hero, as he has unfinished business in Korea. Hearing the refusal, the general says that in that case he has no other choice. He warns that he'll make an offer the young man won't be able to refuse. Intrigued, the young man questions what this irrefusable offer would be. Maintaining his serious expression, the general stares at him for a moment. His proposal shocks the young man as he suggests marriage to his daughter. Showing a photo, he introduces his youngest daughter named Alexandra Natasha. He even asks what the young man thinks, saying he won't be able to refuse. Back at the moment of departure, an officer says the procedures are finalized. Handing over an envelope, he says to take the documents to the airport. Appearing suddenly, the general asks him to think carefully about the proposal. He insists it's a great opportunity, but the young man shouts that he's not interested. Saying this is getting annoying, he comments about the difficult superior. After a sigh, the young man seems to have decided something. Turning to the soldier, he asks if he can ask him a favor. The scene changes, and a large building of the Changcheon Guild is shown. In an office, a man answers the phone that was ringing on his desk. Upon taking the call, he introduces himself as Park Seok-cheon, master of the Changcheon Guild. He's completely shocked hearing the voice on the other end of the line. On the other side, the young man on the phone hears Seok-cheon shout his name. Startled by the call, he falls from his chair and asks what happened. He says everyone was very worried when the young man suddenly disappeared. Desperate, he asks where the young man is, offering to go pick him up. The young man responds that he's far away, but tells him not to worry. Seok-cheon then reveals that things have been kind of stalled at the guild lately. Surprised, the young man asks why things are like that. He explains that the association started taking some actions against them. The young man then asks what kind of actions the association was taking. He tells him that his guild and Northern Lights had their access denied. Even when requesting access, they keep looking for details and refuse entry. The young man listens attentively, processing the gravity of that information. With magic items being worth so much, raids become the main income for guilds. On the phone, he apologizes, saying he feels ashamed for not being able to help. The young man responds that it's not his fault, since it's difficult to challenge the association. At that moment, the general insists on the proposal, but he repeats having no interest. His expression suddenly changes, showing he's made a decision. Warning that he can't stay idle, he says he'll call Seok-cheon later. He then ends the call, even with the other asking him to wait. Turning to the general, he calls him while the old man looks excited. He then says with a smile that he has a favor to ask. The scene shifts to a desolate location, where a heavy blizzard was falling. Arriving there, Seok-cheon complains that the place is a bit cold. The young man then scolds him for being an adult, complaining about the cold. Sighing, Seok-cheon says it's been one surprise after another. He simply can't believe they suddenly ended up in Russia. The young man then questions if in Korea the association wouldn't interfere the same way. Revealing the agreement, he explains that here they need help with the monsters. One of the men then asks why the guild members weren't called. He insists on knowing why only the two of them were called for this mission. He explains that a smaller group can better avoid the association's attention. Telling them to stop complaining, he says to focus on how to catch the monsters. Complaining about the situation, one of them says they've become foreign workers. Just then, a strange noise catches their attention and makes them look back. Quickly, he turns to the others and shouts for everyone to get ready. Pointing upward, he warns that they're coming, surprising everyone.